So, noting that it's approximately 7:02 p.m., I'm calling the Board of Health meeting for October 4th, 2017 to order. So, we have two variance hearings tonight, one appointment, various other business, but we also have, I'd like to announce that there are some items to potentially be added to the agenda as they were not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of this meeting. So, looks like we have one item, and that is for a temporary one-day food permit for approval. Nothing else has come in,
Well,
or?
the only other thing that I left for you today is the Whitney Farm. I don't know if you
Oh,
want
receipt
that
of the letter?
just to note receipt.
Yeah,
or-
let's add
Okay.
noting receipt of the letter, and if we have time, we'll actually look at it, but, okay. So we have those two items. Do we have a motion to approve adding those two items to the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Are you here for anything in particular? Because we have time that we could take something up immediately.
I'm John Farley. I'm one of the variance hearings.
Oh, all right. That has to wait till the official time. Peter?
And I'm here for the update on the raised systems.
And that would be that there is no update.
That would be what?
There is no update, unfortunately. So,
It's on the
no,
agenda.
I know it is, but that's my update, is that there's no new information from the consultant.
Maybe you don't understand. I rushed here to get to the meeting and.
But look how efficiently you resolved it.
Okay, so let me,
Much to your joy.
You found time.
Being here, I make too many comments.
no, you make a lot of helpful comments.
Thank you. That was very generous. Thank you. very
No, but you really do.
much. Okay. Well, then,
So-
hang there.
Oh, okay. And we can use you for historical
Yeah,
input, too.
Yeah, 25 years of a story there.
So, well, which fun thing do we want to talk about first? How
But- So
about,
is that the update for the mounding study?
I
Just-
think
just-
I
Okay.
can't
So
make
put
too
that-
much up. I will say that I can, based on the research I've tried to do over the years on mounding, because I will note that mounding has come up a number of times with the Board of Health. It is something that's been revisited periodically, and at those times when we're looking at regulatory updates, various board members go out and try to read through information and see what there is and how that feeds into whatever modification we're looking at the time, or the board is looking at the time. I can't say. I mean, it hasn't been this board always. So when I've tried to read up on it, there just isn't a lot of information out there. So the single-family home septic systems, and that is what we have, but, you know, there's some very basic science that gets done, then there's larger systems, some work gets done on that, but if you think about it, there isn't a huge motivation for entities that have the funds to study it. So it's usually left to government, and then those resources are often strapped, or research institutions who decide to take it up, or in a way, we're lucky that we've got the Barnstable County Health Department, just because the Cape Cod's in so much trouble that they tend to study things more. So, but that means that there's not as much stuff in print. There also isn't some routine program of researching these things, and it's a more episodic or intermittent kind of research. But it also means that I don't think our consultant is probably able to just go to the literature. He's trying to talk to people and find out what's the next layer of information and that sort of thing. And I could believe that just takes longer. So that's my speculation to some degree. I do know that he is trying to speak with some folks that he knows from his professional work, but I think that just makes this more complicated than other kinds of research. So,
Do you know, has he been reaching out to other state regulators, such as Wisconsin, the state of Washington, New Jersey. I mean, I have contacts at all of those governmental agencies.
So we did talk about that because those are some of the states that tend to do some of this
Yep.
research, and he is aware of that. So I haven't spoken to him to know whether he's been finding the people. I know he was finding the literature side of it the last time we spoke. So I just don't know.
Okay.
But I do know that that's on his radar, so. Yes.
I think you probably have seen me come to
Yeah.
these meetings on a repetitive basis. This is a topic that has caused me to appear, and I think you know that it's related to the offer that has been made to, in effect, put funds towards such a study from a private source to get things moving. And I really am feeling a little bit that we've stalled, and I'd like to see whether or not there is a way in which we can restart a more active process with a set of measurable goals, with, of course, some reasonable leeway in those goals. And I think in some ways, I really do think it would be beneficial if, rather than everything always being perhaps by telephone, that there be email saying, can you please just give us a quick status report, that then can be shared with other members, with Alan, of course, and with the public, and then we can kind of build off of that and to kind of figure out whether or not there's some way of narrowing the breadth of open issues into something that we can achieve. And so I really do think that that would be helpful, even tonight. You could say that before we were thinking of only Barnstable County, but now maybe we should be thinking about Wisconsin and New Jersey and some of those other places, and get the wisdom of more people involved in helping us get some momentum on not only the study that we could funded to do by the town, but then to kind of see whether or not we're ready to ask the question that we would like to have you ask about a pilot and for this particular project. So I really would encourage a little bit more, and I would just ask if there's any way that you can give me a little bit of a crumb about when we're going to get someplace that will make a commitment. Maybe it's not going to be a binding commitment, but a commitment to do something by some date to give us some structure on time. So that's my advice.
Okay, so just a couple of things. What was being done previously was not limited to Barnstable County. It's always been whatever information is out there. The discussions about other states we had well over a month ago, several months probably, when we were first talking about it. So some of that is already being addressed, and part of it is this is a relatively small project. This is a consultant who's in high demand, and some of it is just he's got a busy schedule, and so I think things are taking a bit longer. As I mentioned, I think the difference of it not being only a paper study, that it is going to take him reaching out and contacting folks to get those next level of details. And then, but I agree. I mean, I'd like to have had something tonight so that we would be at the next stage, but we're just not there yet. And then, in terms of when you're talking about funds, so when I talk about funding of things, I don't know that that's going to be the kind of funding that your client is going to want to do. I could be wrong, but these are usually tend to be big studies, long periods of time. It's not let's
pilot
do
test.
something really quick. The kinds of studies usually take quite a bit of time. So I'm not sure. If we can find something in the research that has,
Combine your selected expert with our Schofield Brothers expert to see whether or not there's a system for that specific location that we hopefully could meet the variance standard set forth in the regulations. installation. So that's what I was talking about.
Right.
Seeing whether or not that could be funded.
Okay, okay.
And if we need to do something to help ask the question, please tell us what that is, and we'll jump right into,
Mhm.
we'll write whatever RFP type style thing that you need to submit to Mr. Horsley or Mr. Whitman, whichever one you're using, or whoever else on their staff that they're using. And we'd like to kind of see whether or not it's possible to get some consensus to ask the question and then to find out whether or not there's availability on that end, and then if there is a reasonable timeline to accomplish that, and then figure out whether that's the right path for this matter to evolve to.
Okay, so I think then the other complication is, on this topic, what we're asking is something that just isn't readily available out there, because there's just standard septic designs. What we're looking for is what studies have been done for expansion, amendments, enhancements to that. And that information is few and far between and doesn't always go as far as we would need to. Otherwise, as a Board of Health, we could have collected stuff off the internet and read through it and see what we might have wanted to have adopted. So it's not ready for just taking and applying here, which is why we hired a consultant who could then go out, find out what's there, and follow those threads of information and see, all right, they might not have published yet, but are they studying it? Are they underway? Is that all they did? Do they know of anybody else who's out there doing it? What have they found? Again, do they have any data? What did they test and how? So, and he was finding, we mentioned some of the things that he has identified that folks have been studying. So, but also in that discussion, when he was talking about the nitrogen and phosphorus reductions, I said, well, we are concerned about a broader spectrum of chemicals. So that was also one of the things I asked him we need more. We're looking for something that isn't like the IA technologies that are so narrowly focused. We want to know more broader spectrum of chemicals that are going to be treated, or constituents in the effluent that's going to be treated. So he does have some marching orders in that respect. And again,
When do you think it's reasonable for me to?
Can I just jump in for 1 second? I think one of the things that I'm sort of struggling with is I think you've raised the issue. I know, Peter, you've raised the issue. I think we had other community members. And I think there's a big piece where it's trying to find the balance where the reality is we are a very small project for somebody, and our ability to leverage however strong our desire to move it up his list of priorities is limited. That's sort of my between the lines read on part of it, as well as there's certainly a frustration for people who feel like whether this board or prior boards haven't been fully engaged in this work, feeling like this is sort of dragging a feet, or other pieces, just because there's that gap of trust where people feel like, is this really a good faith effort? Are you really doing this because we've talked about this a lot before? And managing that frustration and managing that tension is, I think, part of what's hard right now. And for me, part of what I'm trying to figure out is what can I do to help that? Because I think ultimately we share the goal of saying, we want to know what the data tells us. We want to know what the data doesn't tell us, and we want to use that information to kind of inform the conversation and make good choices for the current town and the future residents. And it's just this kind of struggle. And so I share that frustration of feeling like with the open meeting and the agenda pieces, needing to be able to have it on the agenda so that we can have a conversation about it, but then only imagine the frustration when you carve out a chunk of your evening to say, okay, I'm going to go. Okay, they got nothing. We'll do it again in 2 weeks. Okay, they got nothing. I wonder what it'll be like in 2 weeks. And managing that is really hard. And I don't know the best way to do it, but I think it's important to acknowledge that that's how I'd feel sitting there, kind of feeling like, are you guys really working on this? Is this really a good faith effort? And, I don't know if there are other things we can do to kind of try to manage that. I'm not sure that there is.
I have an idea. I mean, I juggle a lot of projects. Daryl's a consultant too. I mean, and yes, you're gonna, when you have $1 million client and you have a $10,000 client, you can guess who you're gonna be paying the most attention to. That's just the reality. But on the other hand, he did make a commitment to do the work, so I don't think it's unfair to just put some boundaries on what we believe is a reasonable schedule for at least a level of reporting out, because I think we are all sort of motivated to just keep the ball moving forward. So one thing we could ask him is, could you just, give us not only a project status update, but could you just provide a list to us of whatever articles, literature you have identified to date, so that, I could take, we could all take a look at it, and then if I know of some additional potential sources, it's not like I'm, being redundant with what he's already accomplished. So I think that that's fair. I mean, if he said he's already done some of this research, to just say, okay, give us an update. Can you share with us, what you found thus far? And, we need to sort of talk about the schedule, because it's lagging, and,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that we should be speculating on either side. I don't think we need to make excuses for him, and I don't think we need to assume, why we don't have information yet, because he could be, all night. We might be the most important project right now for him. We don't know. So it's not really fair for us to
Mm-hmm. No,
speculate.
and part of my speculation is more what I found, because I spent a lot of time
Mm-hmm.
researching this. So part of me wishes I could be paying myself to
Yeah.
do this, but I can't
Right.
give much more
Right.
time
Right.
to it. But I've been down that path,
Yeah.
so I know what he's facing. Or I assume I know what he's
Yeah,
facing,
I mean-
but, right, I don't know for sure. But, and I have asked for status updates and, availability to come to a meeting, that kind of thing. So I just haven't heard, so I can't say too much
Yeah.
about that.
I do think it's fair, though, for us to ask him, like,
Yeah.
we need to
Just
provide
communicate.
updates. We need some tangible output.
So,
Yeah.
okay,
And I
so,
think a timeline would make everybody feel better,
Right.
rather than putting it on the
Right.
agenda and saying, oh, sorry, no information.
Right.
all right, so you know what? So here's how we've done certain things that we expect to visit periodically and talk about. So let's not have mounting study on the next, and then it'll be a added 48 hours, if that's how it ends up being.
Oh,
So,
Excuse me, but that's a huge disservice to the public when you don't have it on the agenda and then you're gonna throw it in and they don't know it.
So which would you do, Peter? So we can have it on the agenda, and we can say there's no update, and you can berate us for saying, I came all this way and there's no update, or we can add it on the agenda when there's an
Okay,
update.
My point is, in the context of open meeting law, there has to be an urgent reason to put something on within the last 48 hours that the public doesn't know about. An update doesn't qualify.
Well, so again, if you can answer the question, so you in the first 5 minutes when we said there's not new information shared with us, your frustration about it's on the agenda and there's no update, that's frustrating for me because I rushed to get here. So the ability to provide an update is limited because we're going with an outside consultant and we're dependent on what he does for us. So this is truly a question of, I hear you're frustrated. I want to do the best I can to make it not frustrating, because while this is a very glamorous position, that's my gateway to power and prestige. But
Right.
I want to do my best to do right by people in town so that people who have all different points of view feel like you're doing right by me.
Okay, let me simply opine then, that it's better to put it on the agenda and know what's gonna be there and say, I have nothing, than to slip it in and discuss it without the public there, all right? I think it's a lesser of two evils.
And that's certainly been our approach, and so I think right now we're trying to navigate the feedback that you guys have provided to say this is frustrating. So I think for us, it's kind of threading the needle of which wrong answer would we prefer, and we're certainly happy to keep listening on the agenda.
Let's put the burden on the chair to at least come up with something to say at the meeting because it's on the agenda, you see? And she has actually. You have actually given an update. You've given more information than there was before.
okay, so as long as I can,
Can we check?
Listen to me carefully.
Okay.
I think it's a huge disservice to not put it on the agenda and then toss it in.
okay,
That's because there's, people like myself, I point out, that's the only reason I showed up, and if it's not on the agenda and you throw it in, that's not right. Because
Okay.
there's no urgency about the update, you see.
so I
It's not
will,
like
I think
somebody-
the
it's not like somebody-
I think we need to communicate with the consultant and then put it on the agenda.
Or
Not
there
the-
has
think
Du-
it's
Duly
on
no,
Thursday, and we need approval on Monday.
Peter, I think we got it.
Good.
Okay, and I will note that there have been a number of times with issues, I can't remember if it was this mounding issue, I sort of think it was, or something similar, where it has come up within 48 hours, we've talked about it, but then we repeat it at the next meeting. So our goal is not to, I mean, too many people are interested in this, we're not trying to not share information, we're trying to share whatever we
But
have.
you take my point. Thank you.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, yes.
Just a quick question, has a board member been assigned to manage the contract with this consultant?
Yes, I reach out to him with some regularity.
So you assigned yourself rather than one of the other members?
Oh, but if another member, I
No, I'm
occasionally,
just wondering because, I mean, typically, at least what I do on the boards I'm involved with, you call the consultant either the day or the day before to find out where he is, so you can schedule him.
I do that.
Okay.
I actually manage projects as part of my work. I kind of get that, but it is a little bit different, I find, with town work. It just seems to be different. So, okay. Anything else on that? I will try to immediately, well before our next meeting, get some kind of update from him. Again, but I'll start tomorrow. So, or if somebody else would like to
I
talk
mean,
to him.
I'm happy to help with that. I mean, if it's
Oh, all
sending an
right.
email or making a phone call.
Okay,
If you want to provide me his information.
yeah, and then I can share with you kind of background, what we've discussed,
Okay.
and so you know.
Sure.
I can have the foundation that's been laid. Okay, let's see. Is everyone here to hear about variance hearings, which are coming up in 5 minutes, or are there any other topics? Nope, okay. Hot dog wagon?
Perfect.
We've been
love
waiting
it.
for this.
I like anything that's in quotes.
Okay, they will be at the fire department's 75th anniversary event. Beth did talk to them. She reviewed the application. She requested more information. They have provided it, and she recommended approval.
Okay, of the permit. So there are two levels. One is the permit, and then
Right.
one is the fee waiver. So
Correct.
let's deal with the permit first. Does anyone have any comments before we?
Can I ask a question, though? Isn't Grandy's Ice Cream, my reading of this is it's the same owner, so even though it's two permits, two carts, or is that a separate
No,
one?
it's separate owner.
Oh, it is? Okay. I thought
Different
it said
owner.
it was, okay, never mind.
No, the letter for the waiver of the fee came from the Sherborn Fire and Rescue Association.
Right.
Okay, so let's deal with the permit. Oh, did she recommend, sorry, I
Mhm.
have already forgotten. Has she recommended approval of both or just of?
She has a both, but it's conditional for Grandy's. That just came in today.
Okay.
We've been trying to get, we knew about, there was a second vendor, but they didn't submit the application
Okay,
till tonight.
okay, so
So-
we can vote them separately
Yeah,
then.
so I did
all
talk
right.
to her, and she recommended approval.
All right, so do we have a motion to approve the temporary one-day food establishment permit for the hot dog wagon?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other comments on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and do we have a motion to approve a temporary one-day food permit for Grandy's Ice Cream, subject to receipt of their application?
We have the application.
Oh, we do have
But
the
there's,
application.
Beth just hasn't been able to connect with them and talk to them, and she might have more information that she's requested. I talked to Beth tonight, and she said, recommend approval, conditional to me.
To her
talking to them and-
finalizing
Right.
information verification or something. Okay, so change that, so not conditional to receipt of the application, but of additional information and confirmation by the agent.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and then regarding, do you think we could talk about fee waivers in 2 minutes, or?
Yeah, you should do it for this.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, all right, so this is, we've looked at fee waivers when it's between one town department, committee, what have you, and another, but in this case, it's, I'm not sure if, even though it's being requested by the Sherborn Fire and Rescue Association, the fees are paid by the vendors. So I'm not sure, and it looks like that's because when they say the vendors are forfeiting their fee, does that mean that they're, if they were not paying the fee to the Board of Health, they would pay that money that would have gone to that fee to the Sherborn Fire and Rescue Association?
I don't, perhaps they charge to come to their event, and they're waiving that
Oh,
fee to Sherborn Fire and Rescue.
I mean, they said that they're giving 10% of the proceeds back. It's not like they're doing
right.
a complete charity funding, and neither of them are from our town.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure why they're asking
Right, and I don't know what that forfeiting their fee means, and,
to bring the cart. I mean, it's so that they can make money. I don't.
Right.
Yeah, that seems odd.
I don't know that we've waived fees for other one-day vendors. I thought that we usually have the fee, and that's just part of, for the vendor, wasn't there a vendor who came for the Wednesday night music in front of the library during the summer?
I don't recall. I don't recall.
Yeah, I think there was somebody who had asked, and that we didn't waive the fee because
Yeah.
they were a food establishment, and
Well, so here's my question. So on the letter, it says it's 2 separate vendors,
Mhm.
and names them, but it says the owner and proprietor is Diane Peters. So I was just unclear if she owned both
No,
or just
no,
the second one.
no,
Okay, that's
the-
Yeah,
Steve
it was
Scanlon owns the hot dog wagon.
okay.
And Diane Peters is
It's
Grandy's
Grandy's.
Ice
Okay,
Cream.
okay. It was a little confusing.
Mhm.
So there is an administrative cost.
Right, we have the agent
Um,
do some work on it.
The majority of the permits are within the town anyway. So I think if we have to just, we're going down a slippery slope, so.
I agree.
All right, anyone want to make a motion on this fee issue?
I don't know how.
Okay.
Make a motion
do
to
we have a
waive the
motion
fee.
to-
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
To waive it.
Waive the fee, and it's usually presented in the positive as opposed
Right,
to a
that's what I
motion
was
to
trying-
deny the fee.
Okay.
Right, so it's, and then we can vote yea or nay appropriately afterwards,
Okay.
so.
Can I just say so moved?
Sure.
Seconded?
Okay, any other discussion? And so a yay vote would mean, let's see, do we have a motion to waive, would mean that we waive the fee, and a nay vote would mean that we don't waive the fee. So all those in favor? Opposed? Nay. Okay.
It's our first.
All right, and it's 7:30, and we have a variance hearing for septic replacement at 45 Rockwood. And are there abutters? Okay, so what's going to happen is the engineer is going to present the plans and the reasons for variances being requested. So if you want to come up and look on, as the maps will be laid out, he'll explain it. And then he'll explain, the board will ask questions, we'll talk to the agent, And if you have any questions, and after we're all done with ours, you can ask.
Again, I can share if you want.
Thank you.
Before you start.
Oh, yes, green cards.
Yes, we did get all of the, and actually, for some reason, all of the abutters have been notified twice.
Room to spare.
I called Eric and spoke to Eric when I got a second abutters list from the assessor's office, because I thought someone else had requested
25 Rock.
the,
It wasn't us.
yeah, and he was going to call and talk to the parties and make sure that they weren't notified twice, but apparently they were. But luckily, there were only 4 abutters that needed to be notified, so,
And they've all responded.
and we got them all twice.
Okay,
Okay. Should have more over here.
Yeah,
yes.
All right, so this is 45 Rockwood. Interesting history with the property. 2015, for whatever reason, the septic tank had failed. I don't know what the problem was, but it was replaced. This is the residence.
The roofer on the roof looked down and saw into the tank.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, smart guy. So, Rockwood Street is out here. The tank was replaced along with the distribution box. It was a brand-new 1,500-gallon 2-compartment tank back in 2015. So we had that to deal with to start. It was fairly deep. It's 3 feet below grade. So this is a hill sloping down this way. The existing system is here. So we tested down as close to the edge of the woods as we could, getting it down far enough so that we would have a gravity system. As it turns out, groundwater was high, basically 24 inches below grade. And the other problem with the site was that the perk rate was very slow, 50 minutes per inch. That's almost 60 is the limit. There were no additional bedrooms. It's designed for the existing 4-bedroom capacity. It's basically a standard stone and pipe system. No alternative systems considered here. And still, it's a mound of, let's see, 90 over a current 86, so it's almost 4 feet, even as it stands. So, really, the only variance we're requesting of significance is really from section 8.01 to vary the terms of the Sherborn rules and regs and allow the system to be 4 feet above seasonal high groundwater versus 5. Again, 4 feet is in total compliance with Title V.
And I know we're not up to 2 yet, though, but, so what will be the depth to groundwater? It is gonna be
4
4
feet.
feet below the bottom of the system.
Which is, unless you do an alternative system like an Elgin, then it's stone and pipe.
He's saying 4 feet for Title V.
Right.
Yeah.
First, but hence the variance. Okay, so,
Again, by doing that, that allows us to do this without a pump.
okay, so as you can see the lines, if you haven't looked at these before, there are wells and then there's a required setback, and so they draw these lines, so that helps
Right.
show what the workable area is, and then you have to look at other site
And
constraints
just to
that
point
might
out,
exist.
The well for the residence
No,
is
why is
higher
it
than the septic. The radius required by Sherborn is 125, and this well is clearly below, so the radius required is
Could be the
150. We're
property
probably more like 180
This is the
or 90.
well line. It's kind of confusing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and Mark, any particular comments?
No, I been out to the site. The soils were, for the majority of the soils, they were very slow for the perk rate, so that's why the system's so large. And I did see the septic tank replaced a couple of years ago, so pretty much understand the need for the waivers as requested.
And I see the effluent filter was installed, so it was recently installed or way back in 2015?
It was installed in 2015.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, we were anticipating
Oh.
having a failed system 3 years
Oh,
later.
okay.
Appreciate.
Okey
So
dokey.
it helped a little in the interim in the last 3 years.
Okay, extended its life, all right. I don't have any other questions, anybody else? So do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 8.01?
So moved.
Second?
Any other comments,
Looks good to me.
questions?
No, it's
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And then under section 8.02, this is Sherborn's rule that required septic systems to be put in an area where the groundwater is at least 5 feet below the surface. And although we didn't test anywhere else on the property, according to the soil maps published by the federal government, the area is all the same. It's all Paxton type soil with high groundwater.
Okay, and as you mentioned,
Mound.
there was the desire to have it be a gravity-fed system that would just have less moving parts that could fail.
Right.
So we
That's why it's so
do
far down.
like that since we do have power outages around here. So,
Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point.
even though you wouldn't be getting a whole lot of water during a power outage either, but it is one less part to need maintenance and what have you, so. All right, do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 8.02?
So moved?
Second.
And any other questions? I'm trying to think of any other comments. We do see this, but again, if the system has failed, this is going to be a better performing system. And so, all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, all right, so I'll close the hearing, and are the plans ready for approval?
Yes, they are conditional to the deed recording for the garbage grinder.
Okay, and that's the only
Yes.
condition? Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the plans, and they be released upon receipt of an appropriate deed restriction for the garbage grinder?
So moved?
Second.
Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, so you just need to do then the deed restriction, and
Ellen will be.
I'll send it.
Except that I'm no longer on the property.
Yeah.
I delivered
No, he'll do it. It has to be in the owner's name, so, yeah.
oh, okay. Oh,
No garbage grinder. Sounds good.
and you know what, they're not good for any septic system. So your system will last longer, perform better.
Must not go too
You
far.
guys have a good night.
So, all right. So we have 10 minutes, let's see. That one's, I would say Maple Street's gonna take too long.
Is there time for a bathroom break,
Sure.
or would you rather
wanna
wait
have
to
a-
another time? I mean, I could just like them at some point, because it's not an emergency.
Well, if we talked about, I guess, all right, so you want to have a 5-minute recess?
Sure.
Okay, 5-minute recess?
I'm glad we're having a recess. I'm gonna ask you a question. Let's see, Paul, I have your plans here, so there they are. The invert for leaving the studio, this is 87 Maple.
Oh, I didn't put it
Oh,
on.
Not sure.
See it anyway, you put it here.
You're right.
Didn't seem
I
like
had
a
it on
good time
there.
to say nay.
Oh, okay, so,
Okay,
but
I'll
I
get that
presume
on.
you have the 2% or?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
You can just explain that. can show that in the as-built, because your elevations show that you're up to
Miss recess.
98. I was gonna say, you must have some.
So in Alaska, we could have recess until
Crossover.
it was 15 below, or if there was a
Yeah.
moose on the playground.
My favorite, we went to Alaska,
Yeah?
No, I don't think
6 years ago.
they're all
Where'd you go?
expected.
We went to Anchorage,
Nice.
we took bus trip up to Prudhoe Bay.
Oh my gosh, you went all the way up. It is beautiful.
Fun. Then we flew back, and then
Wow.
we cruised down to Vancouver.
Oh, that sounds fabulous. That's a
But
wonderful trip.
It was the most fun. I would go back to Alaska.
And did you stop at Denali on the way up?
Yeah, yeah.
The thing that just is always striking, so again, like when you grow up there, you're like, yeah, this is fine. And then you go out somewhere else, and you're like, oh, it's really big. So Denali Park is the size of Massachusetts with
Yeah.
one road that goes like, I don't know, whatever it is, 60 or 80 miles.
Unfortunately, we didn't see the mountain. It was
Yeah, that's
all
pretty
covered
common.
in clouds. But we saw
But just that park, you just did
we
so much
went up,
open.
and
Yeah,
we saw a lynx.
yeah.
I mean, right out the bus window. I mean, we saw.
And it's just such a large, wild area that you just kind of out here, you're like, oh no, there's nothing like this. You're like, no, it's never been something different.
Was the most fun.
Oh, what a wonderful
We
trip.
stopped in Fairbanks. We followed the pipeline.
Yeah. Oh, that's super.
And
What
it
made
was-
you, that's an unusual trip. What made you decide to take that one?
We
You just like,
wanted
want to
do
see the
something
pipeline?
different.
I
We
like it.
wanted to do something different. We went up to Fairbanks, Denali, Fairbanks, and then we stopped at Cold Foot. It was a truck stop, and
Yeah.
it was the most fun.
I love it.
The most fun we've ever had.
I love it.
It was
What a wonderful trip.
great.
Good stuff, that sounds.
So I actually touched the Arctic Ocean.
There
So
you
that
go.
was the other wrinkle
It's
that I
not
added.
common.
Imagine? No. Well, I mean, that, like lots of people go up. You're the first person I've ever heard doing. My in-laws drove up, not up to Prudhoe Bay, but on the Canadian side, there's a Dempster that goes all the way up.
Yeah.
And they took that one years ago. They drove their minivan from
And
upstate
then
New
we
York all the
actually,
way up.
we flew from Prudhoe Bay to Barrow.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
can say I've actually been in
Yeah.
the northernmost.
City. I like it. Does that mean you're going to West Quaddy next? Where's it? What's the lighthouse in Maine that's the northeasternmost point in the U.S.? There's a lighthouse there. I think it's
Oh,
West
really?
Quaddy, Maine. Because
Oh,
then East
really?
Quaddy's in Canada. And so my wife and I did that trip when I was in residency. We were like, we're just gonna drive up the Maine coast to see
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
northeast corner. It was really interesting as you get past. I'm completely blanking on the big park on the Maine coast.
Acadia.
Acadia.
Okay,
so
so-
as you get past Acadia.
All right, so let's do that on the
Back
7th. All right, so we are back in session. And Rick, are we all set? Okay. All right, let's see. We have another hearing in 5 minutes. Oh, so we have an upcoming Massachusetts Association of Health Boards Certificate Program. And we just want to confirm attendance, who wants to go. There's one on the November 4th in Marlborough. And then there's another one later in November,
The 18th.
18th in
In Taunton.
Taunton. Okay.
Do we have the
s-
time? Did you send us the,
It's
schedule?
Saturday, and it usually starts around
8:30
8:30 and goes till
Till
4:30, roughly.
4:30, yeah.
It's an all-day.
The difference this year is emergency preparedness grant may not cover the registration costs this year. It has not yet been approved by DPH.
Oh, okay. So if it's not going to cover, then,
It would have to
Okay.
come out of the budget.
okay.
oh, well,
Which we can do, and we've done, because here's the thing, when you go under that grant money, you have to take, I think, half the day
Yeah.
has to be in emergency preparedness courses, which some have been great, and some I felt just were never going to apply
And
to,
that
to
might
work
be
that we
why
would do here.
DPH isn't,
Oh, okay.
look like it will be approved.
Oh, all
this year.
right.
So far, but we haven't heard, but I keep asking, and I keep being told they haven't heard yet.
Okay, so then we could go and take whatever we want to take, which is what we did one year. I took
Like pick
some
and
emergency
choose?
preparedness, but there was something else that I felt was much more relevant to Sherborn.
Yeah.
By
would
doing that,
probably
then we
skip
ended
that.
up paying, but frankly, it was worth it.
Can,
so-
so do they have a clear agenda that we could look at and see what topics are being covered?
Isn't it I'm pretty sure I looked through, I can't remember what they were
I don't
now,
know,
but,
is it this year's posted? The last time I looked, it wasn't, but I haven't looked in the past
Because
week and a half.
that would be ideal if we can pick and choose, like, you know, maybe I only want to go to 2 hours worth or 4 hours worth on, not 8. So if someone could find that and then we could look at
Okay.
it, then
But then
so when do you need to be signing everybody up by?
Venice has already asked if you're planning to come. She wants to know,
Yeah.
so.
So I was planning to go to the November 4th.
So that's definite, so I can sign you up. Okay.
can you read that? Or you can't read
And then, is everyone else, so, Matt, I recall, I don't think you were
I think I'm not
available for either one, and
I
then
may
you'd like
be,
to see
but I
what
wanna-
what
I
it
wanna
is.
see what it
Okay,
is
and
before I
same
commit.
for you, or, yeah, which, and would you be going?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
going to go on the November 4th.
Oh, okay, all right, so,
You're definitely going
are
November
you,
4th?
okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I mean, do
Well-
you have the agenda?
We do pay for it up front,
Right,
so.
no, no, of course.
Okay,
I don't have the agenda yet, but I
Okay.
will.
okay,
Yeah.
so Ellen will,
I guess the
If
only
and
time
when
that I
it's
would change would
posted-
be if it doesn't get approved, and then it turns out there's something more interesting that we know about in advance, in which case there might be a change, but I don't expect there to be a change.
Okay.
Pretty soon.
Yeah. Right now, I was just saying, the only time it would change would be if it doesn't get, if the scenario you guys just proposed applies. So yes, I'm planning to go.
Okay.
okay. Minute? All right, we're just going to move on. So we have a variance hearing for a septic replacement at 38 Farm Road. And, surprise, surprise,
The green cards all came in. They're all set.
it's Paul. All right, are there any abutters who would like to come up and look at the plans as they're discussed? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have the plan?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We share because I can't see.
38 Farm Road. House. On this side of the property, there's a pretty steep hill. This is all land. Down in here, there was a small amount of lawn, but mowed lawn, but there are several large trees within the area. The existing septic system is a 1,000-gallon tank at the house, and there's an existing sewer line that runs down the box about here, and it's serviced by 2 leaching pits, one here, one here. So, we were able to squeeze in here between the trees and do 2 test pits. One of the variances we're gonna be asking for is it surely requires 3. So we found groundwater relatively high, 24 inches below grade. Again, the effort here is to try to get it downhill enough so we can avoid a pump. The house is assessed as a 3-bedroom. We've kept the septic at 3-bedroom and any flow. The difference with this system is, just like the last one, we're asking that we keep the existing tank. This is original to the property, it's only a 1,000-gallon tank. Technically, 3 times 330 is 990. Sort of meets the requirements for holding time for Title V, but it's only a 1 compartment. So what we're proposing to do is keep that. This area is heavily landscaped with stone walls and patio blocks and all that. Keep the existing line, which runs through this infestation of pine trees. Put a new 1,000-gallon tank down here and then run from there to a distribution box and a leaching field of those wind drains that would service the 330 gallons a day. And by using the Elgins, we can go closer to groundwater. It's still a mound of a couple of feet, but at least we don't have to encircle it with a retaining wall because it's close to the driveway. And we really can't go up the hill because then we lose the effect of gravity.
So it'll be, rather than a two-compartment tank, two single-compartment tanks, am I?
Right. An
Okay,
effluent filter in this tank.
okay.
And so across Farm Road, because it's a pretty steep grade, obviously, which is great for the wells. But I just was wondering, there's nothing close on the other side of Farm because it's gonna just sheet
Right.
flow and
There is
flow.
nothing on the other side. Are we opposite the pond? No, because the pond that's on Farm Road, that's much further down.
Oh, way further down.
So what's across
I
the
mean,
street?
Little Farm.
Just empty land owned by George Chestnut.
Okay, so I mean, to answer
Oh,
your
good.
question,
Okay.
we are taking down 3 fairly large trees.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything, actually, we're reducing the slope that currently exists by creating a level
Yeah,
area.
you're
and then-
adding.
And then a drop.
So I guess, given what you were mentioning, and we often look for gravity-fed systems, but I don't know, would it be better? I mean, do you think groundwater would be deeper up here? At what point is it worth a trade-off of a
Right.
pump?
Well, it's all mapped as glacial till. Groundwater and till usually follows grade. So, let's see, test pit number 2. Groundwater at 24, test pit number 1, which is further down the hill by 2.5 feet. It still had groundwater. So typically, I would expect this hill to have groundwater.
Right.
Right.
Similar? Does that,
Were you asking if they moved it up a little bit?
Up
Yeah.
the hill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in that direction. So not closer to the house necessarily, but just wouldn't groundwater be deeper if you just,
I don't believe so. Again, this is mapped as glacial till.
yeah.
I forget exactly which one it is, but tills like this, the groundwater typically follows grade. If groundwater were deeper, I think the forest wouldn't look as good as it does.
Mm.
We had roots all the way to 54 inches. That's 4.5 feet below grade. So they were looking for water. In the summertime, obviously, the groundwater is going to be lower, but in the wintertime, we felt that pushing it up further would really gain us nothing except a bump.
yeah, I always wonder about, for small terrain changes like this in a short space, whether you've really got groundwater
Right.
sitting under there like this, but,
You know, I'd like to
Um,
think
yeah.
that it's just as deep up here as it is down here, but it isn't, in my experience. And again, we don't show it, but this is all heavily wooded. This area we dug in, it's actually mowed lawn in between the trees.
Oh, so you're saying
Okay,
it's
so there's
heavily
another-
vegetated.
To put in.
A lot of woods there.
So you're
So it's
saying-
going in the area with fewer trees.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't have the trees grown in
Yeah, and
the
again,
septic anyway.
by asking.
Right, no, but
that
there
you
are
allow
fewer
us
trees
this
removed.
line, and we show on the plan that we're gonna wash it and then camera it. And it was in fact cambered by Scott Septic when they first did the Title V inspection, because they were looking for the distribution box. And they told us the line was fine, but we didn't witness it, so we'll have it done again. We agree to keep it, and also we'll pump the tank and inspect that and make sure it's still fine integrally. And if it's not, then we're gonna make sure to replace it, in which case this tank will go away.
And this is the first time for one of the hearings I've been at that the question of the lines come up. I guess, what are the sort of trade-offs? Is it really just that we've got the large pines to take down if we
Right.
did replace the line? And again, if it's a functional conduit that's intact, a new conduit will be no more intact.
Right.
And how can I ask a technical, so when you're using two separate tanks, how does that affect the way the effluent is distributed?
It doesn't, excuse me, it doesn't.
So is one where it goes first and then the other's an overflow, or
Yeah,
Or it
the
doesn't
is it
run.
diverted
Sample,
at some
The
point?
entire 1,000 gallons will function to hold the solids,
Mm-hmm.
just as if this were a 1,500-gallon tank. So there's a teed outlet, and the wastewater would, instead of going to the next compartment right here, which we would rather not do and tear up all this yard work, it's gonna be here, and instead of being 500 gallons, it's gonna be 1,000 gallons. A little more storage is better. We could have actually purchased a 500, but an extra 500 is not that bad. I mean, I wouldn't wanna put another 2,000-gallon tank in for this. When you get too much holding time, not enough water use, then you get a bigger generation of gas, and then it pulls the solids up, and it won't get out, but it'll plug the effluent filter a lot faster.
And so this sort of whole section up here is to say we've got mature landscaping, lots of other pieces, so if we can functionally
Right.
come up with a solution that doesn't disrupt those, that then drives the variance.
And do we have other 2 tanks in series to
I think we have
provide
one or
the?
two out there,
Okay.
2 lots, and we've seen it before. Not often, but,
Mhm.
if someone put a fairly new tank in, they would just add an
Yeah, 'cause-
additional tank.
Under normal circumstances, just one tank would be less expensive, one hole to dig,
Sure.
one tank to put in, so.
Well, and it brings out the question of distance from the structure. Paul and I had a discussion on the septic tank is to be 50 feet from the structure that it serves, and we had a discussion on, is the garage a structure that it serves? The whole reason I think the board created that, it was before my time, so it was prior to 86, was due to making sure the building pipe wasn't too long for solids not to clog. In this case, the second tank's going to be 82 feet from the structure that it serves, not 50, but if you look at the garage, the new tank is 42 feet from the edge of the garage, so the effluent leaving that first tank is more liquid than anything else because it's already had a chance to settle, so this could be the way we look at this one different from others. But that should be on the discussion part of this
Something I
plan.
want to consider in the future, because it does say the tank, it doesn't say.
It just says
shouldn't have
structure.
50 feet of line.
Well, it says structure that it serves. It's it basically says, this plan shall include, I'm sorry, it says, I just had my finger on it. It says, no septic tank shall be located more than 50 feet from the structure that it serves. It's for discussion. I agree.
So for
It's-
discussion purposes, I could meet that, I could run the sewer line around the building 3 times and put the tank 49 feet and
Yeah.
I comply. So
No, I
it needs to be
understand.
rewritten. If the 50 feet of sewer line is what's important, it does have to be rewritten.
I believe that. That's my belief, but I wasn't here when they created this. It could be that. The only other thing I could think of is, if it's way out in the distance, it may be difficult to pump. So it's one of the two. I'm not for sure, but I would think
We don't have that issue,
It
right?
seems like
engineering-wise,
serially has addressed a lot of that, because
I agree, I agree.
Mm.
Kind of settle on the existing tank, and
Right,
whatever
no,
got
we
through
will,
the first
yeah.
tank is something that's gotta wanna move anyway.
exactly. And I would weigh that this would be allowed based on that, but it's up to the board if you so wish to grant a waiver and then make that the condition due to the fact that it is a secondary tank and it's liquid waste. It's up to the board how you wish to handle it. But I don't have a problem with the design. I just, handling the administrative part of the waiver is up to the board.
That's not on here.
No, Paul and I discussed, and it's up to him.
Because of the garage, too.
Yeah, and it,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the
yeah.
garage is actually the entrance to the house. The way they use it, they pull into the garage. There's
So-
actually a room here next to the garage.
Right.
That's how they go in and get into the house.
And it doesn't specify, like, a
It-
bathroom or
it- yeah, I
something
know,
in
it just says
particular, so.
the structure that it serves, and
Yeah, right.
anyone's guess on
I
that.
think that's fair.
Right, and that's, I'm noting, that'll be one of those things that
Mhm.
we could clarify
Revisit, yeah.
in the regulations, but
Do
I,
you want me to read through this list?
so we'll just go through one by one and vote on them that way. It seems to move
Again,
along
as I
more
mentioned
easily.
earlier, do you want to do it or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay, under section 5.1C of the Sherborn rules, that requires 3 test pits and 2 perks. Again, it's heavily wooded. We had all we could do to get back on there with 2. The soil logs show that the soil were consistent in both holes, so 3 is really not necessary. 2 is what's compliance with Title V and 2 perks, so we're requesting a waiver.
Okay, and this is something that we see with some regularity. So Mark, any comments on this
No,
particular
I
site
would-
and
I
issue?
have no problem with that, and we see that, as you said, on a regular basis. When you have tight constraints, as we do here with the hill.
Okay, so do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 5.1C?
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Under section 7.23, to allow us to use the existing septic tank for water reasons. And again, we will pump it, dry inspect it, and make sure that it's structurally sound. And
Okay.
watertight.
You do note here that if the septic tank is determined to be structurally deficient, it'll be replaced with a 2-compartment tank in the same spot? Or,
Probably, because
okay.
that one will have to be destroyed if it's not structurally sound.
Mhm.
So, yeah, then we'd be tearing this whole place up.
Okay.
You'll excavate it, and yeah.
All
And then eliminate the other tank, do you believe, too,
If we
Paul?
went to a 1,500, we probably.
Yeah.
So you'll stay up within 50 feet of the house, and
Yeah.
you know, as long as it's within 50 feet, it
a little
won't
further
matter if
from the
it's
garage.
further. Yeah, I was gonna say, it would be appropriate in my view, but that's where we get into the solids and the pipe business, so.
Okay, and if they encounter that while they're out doing the work, that's something that you could inspect in the field?
It could be a field change with a plan
and then with the plans
modification.
updated? Okay,
It's up to the board if you wanna see that plan modification. This would be a good time to discuss it, to make that determination.
well, I would say if it starts moving far enough away that you think it gets into other questions,
And
then I would leave it to you to draw that line, if that's
Sure.
okay with everybody?
I
About
think
whether
we-
it's
yeah.
a field change versus a more significant change that has to be
I think the board was very clear
rediscussed.
that within a reasonable distance of the existing tank that's there, you know, I would think that would be, but
Okay.
not to destroy everything that's there either.
Okay, so do we have a motion to grant a variance to 7.23?
So moved.
Second.
And any other questions on that? Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
The third variance is from section 8.0.1, to let us comply with Title V by making it 4 feet to groundwater instead of 5. Perk rate was, basically we designed it on a 10-minute rate, perk was 8. So we're getting substantial holding time. The 1 foot off also allows us the opportunity to make this a gravity system without putting it down, further down, closer to the street and maintaining 20 feet to the property line.
Okay. All right, and am assuming, so in a way, the Elgin is also
Yeah, you
feeding
want that- you
into
want
that
at
kind
the
of,
same time?
Yeah,
Okay, so, again,
we can vote them together? Yes.
801, yeah.
Because it feeds
Yeah.
into part of the reason that this
just for
variance
future
is
reference, you still want 'em separate?
reasonable.
No, I would put those
Yeah,
together.
I would do
Yeah.
it together,
Okay.
only, because I like the justification personally of the reduction also being associated with
Okay, all
this.
right. So again, under that same
alternative.
section, we're asking to go from 4 to 2, which is really granted by right, from DEP when you use an Elgin in drain because it's considered secondary treatment. So because you're providing more treatment to the wastewater, we feel that you don't need the 4 feet, the separation of 2 feet is adequate. So it's closer to the groundwater, but you're getting more treatment, so DEP feels it's a trade-off.
So,
Again, for us, it allows us to avoid another 2 feet of mound and retaining walls around to keep everything in. It would get way too high for any kind of 3-to-1 slope off the sides, which is recommended as the
so on this one, again, it is something that's approved by DEP. It does offer additional treatment, doesn't treat everything. It's one of, the innovative alternative technologies that has sort of a narrow focus, so it shouldn't be confused with treating everything to a higher degree. However, it's a replacement system, it's taking care of things. It's definitely better than the existing pits, which, based on what you said, and depth to groundwater are probably in groundwater, so this would be just a huge improvement over that. So, any other questions, comments?
That seems
It's-
straightforward.
It needs to just meet all the Elgin requirements, that's all, per the manual, the approved DEP manual.
Okay, so do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 8.01?
So moved.
Seconded?
Any other comments?
Just a quick note, does the client know this limits them to 3 bedrooms?
Yeah.
Okay. So they know that, okay.
Okay, and that's part of the
The deed
remedial use
recording,
approval
yeah, that-
process,
Exactly.
so, okay. All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you. Then, under Title V, local upgrade approval, section 15405(1H), this is where we show the fact that we're using another new grading going from 4 feet to 2 feet in accordance with DEP approval of that. Given following conditions are met, the existing system failed, which it was. There's no increase in design flow, we're staying 3 bedrooms. And there's no reduction in setbacks from any private lots.
Okay. So basically, that says you'd have to have a different technology and a different system if you wanted more bedrooms in the house, so. Okay, but I'm assuming that this one has certainly cost advantages, mound reduction, all the rest,
Absolutely.
so. Questions, anybody? All right, do we have a motion to grant a variance to section, on Title V, section 15.405(1H)?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, do we feel that we need to address distance at the moment for the second tank as a variance to our distance to the dwelling it serves, or is
So
that
since the
satisfied by the
garage-
first tank being there? Or the garage?
And/or the garage. I mean, that seems, it says structure, right? I mean, so I think that there could certainly
Yeah, I mean,
be
I
a
think
case
Eric
made
even-
that the
Eric even
garage is part of
provided
that structure,
Mark
so.
with, copy of the definition of structure from the building codes. So,
Mm.
I mean, yes, it's a garage, but again, like a lot of houses today, people pull in the garage and go in.
It's
Mhm.
attached to the house, right?
It's
Yeah,
attached
it's
to the house.
attached, yeah.
And, you know, there's a sturdy door here, but I think it has a window in it even, and this is actually a little office.
Right,
Right.
so I could see whether we considered in the future some rewrite that says really it's about the distance that the material has to travel to
Right.
get. So that might be a revision, but I don't see it to be in conflict with what we have now. The intent is,
Right.
some fuzzy, but I do
Right.
believe the intent is met
Yeah.
by this first
Yeah.
tank that'll deal with the solids and the potential clogging over a long
Right,
distance
I
run,
mean, if that's
so-
what you're trying to prevent, right?
In my belief.
Solids. is-
Okay, so we don't need
Access to the
to,
tanks for pumping and as well as solids, and this plan shows the possibility for both because of the fact that it's a liquid effluent in most of the first tank leaving into the second, and also it's right up the driveway, both tanks, so it's not like they're out in the woods somewhere. So I don't see an issue, it's just,
For instance, over on Pleasant Street, Pheasant Home,
well, you have to,
we go from the house to the bottom of the field, probably 300 feet to get to the pump station. So we're flowing by gravity from the septic tank.
Same idea,
300
yeah,
feet to the pump
almost.
chamber. And that's pumping another 200 feet or more to
wow.
the distribution box.
mm,
So we do have some sites here that have some
Mm.
more distances.
Right, and part of this, though, is to make it easier in the long term for a homeowner to maintain something, so
Right.
that if there is a clog, it's not somewhere in this enormous length of
Yeah,
pipe,
In our case,
so.
this has been pumped since day one, it's a driveway here,
Mhm.
and this one's just,
Yeah.
further
That
down
sounds
the
like we
driveway.
think no waiver necessary.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
think
seeing
that,
one.
I agree with that.
Okay,
Sounds good.
all right. So then I'll close the hearing, and are the plans ready for approval?
They're ready for approval, conditional to
Garbage
the
grinder.
deed recordings for both the garbage grinder and the notice of
IA.
alternative system,
Okay,
and a minor modification that we can easily discuss. Paul, it's just on the elevation over the D-box. I know what you meant, it just came out 4 feet lower. There's no possible way, because it shows on the plot plan it's where it's supposed to be. Minor,
We're talking a
minor.
typo?
It's a typo. Instead of 101.3, it probably meant to be 105.3, because there's no way the D-box is gonna be lower than the field.
okay, and
No problem.
just before we vote on the plan, there's mention about inspecting the tank to look at its
Yes.
integrity and running a camera
That's a
through
good
the
point.
lines. Where does that come into play in terms of being a requirement? Because you've offered it here, but,
You can make that as
Just
part of the
omitted,
approval.
mark's not
Okay.
available, but-
No, but it's just make it part of the approval that
okay,
that is a
that,
requirement.
okay,
It's on the plan, but it's good to highlight it.
okay. Oh, and, all right, so Ellen, we have 5 things then. Garbage grinder deed restriction for IA technology, some sort of notation or adjustment
Minor-
about the
minor,
elevation over the D-box?
There's a typo, I believe.
Oh, okay. And then inspection of the existing tank.
How is the elevation over the D-box gonna be corrected
Through the as-built,
through the asphalt?
I believe you can do it that way, Paul. We can, and pre-construction
Fine.
review.
Okay.
And then camera inspection of the lines. Okay, and you have a comment, question?
I was only gonna say that it is a garage, but there's a bedroom and a bathroom above the garage.
Oh,
Ah, perfect.
oh,
Even
okay.
better.
Yeah,
That,
it's definitely part of the structure.
Sold.
Right,
Truly
All right.
service.
good.
Have a good night, guys.
Oh, so do we have a motion to approve the plans subject to those conditions?
so moved. Yep.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks very much.
All right. Oh, and you'll get from Ellen the deed restriction
Right.
language?
And
Okay.
here's the, you need to sign it, DEP. Right, thank you.
Paul,
All right,
do you want the,
So we-
Paul? I have the declaration here, if I can, I'll just hand it to him right now. Do you want these to, these are,
So we're up to this.
Oh, I'll get it.
Okay, Ellen will,
I'll give it to
and then
I
you'll
got
have a
'em right
record
here.
of
Oh,
sending
you'll
it
do
or
it,
something
okay,
too,
okay.
so. Okay. All right, so we have an appointment to discuss 9 Green Lane and 15 Green Lane about the sequence of construction and groundwater determination. Hi, yep, come on up.
So this is,
it's this one.
Yeah, that's fine.
I see the lot 3 figure, I didn't see a lot 4.
This is,
Lot 4 is more for construction.
Oh,
This
okay,
is
it's just a sequencing. Okay.
this is 15 Green Lane, so this is the house that we're requesting, and I'll find the right reference, the reduction in the base floor height. Where this comes from is section 8.4, vertical grades and clearances. No basement floor shall be constructed less than 2 feet above the high groundwater level or groundwater table. If the foundation is planned or existing, it must be shown on the plan that the discharge point, foundation drains, systems shall not terminate below the surface of the ground. So what happened was there was a test done right here. This has nothing to do with the tank, the field. Tank doesn't change. Elevations, inverts don't change of the tank at all. There was a test hole done here, in which it happened to be done during a very heavy rain, so we had a 197.2 grade, and the groundwater was estimated at 196.9, so basically about 4 or 5 inches below the top of the ground. 2 days later, this water table was down about 3 feet. What I've tried to show in this design, if you will, we constructed or did the layout based upon the higher grade water table, which would put the basement floor at 199.7. This entire lot from here over is less than 199.7. The grade, the existing grade. So we're trying to show that this is a very steep lot that falls off. So there's actually no significant issue with water table because it's extremely easy to drain the lot if there happens to be a higher water table up near where the garage and family room would be. And then I am making the request that we be able to drop the floor 2 feet of the house, which sort of mirrors the data we got 2 days later from the monitoring well. It's still higher than the blue section of this lot. So the blue section of this lot is lower than 197.9. I'm sort of fighting, the house is coming way out of the ground, tremendous amount of fill. I'm fighting the height restriction in town because right now the entire, as it's designed, the entire house from here to here is a full walkout plus. So by being able to drop the house 2 feet, we'll have no problem with a perimeter drain resolving any potential basement high groundwater that might only be up at this higher side and has nothing to do with the septic system at all. So we're not changing the tank or the elevations to the tank. So that's what we'd like to request.
Okay. Go ahead.
Two quick questions. Are they sure when they measured it during the precipitation that it wasn't just infiltrating into the hole? Because, I mean, groundwater wells are generally a much better measure and indicator of the actual groundwater table elevation than a test pit anyway. But, I mean, do they think they were really measuring the water table?
We did it at a certain time. We did it when we knew that Mark was out with some other testing, so we could monitor at the same time. It's stabilized, and I think it's fairly common that you almost need to give a well 2 or 3 or 4 days to stabilize.
Yep.
So we feel that the stabilized rate, it wouldn't even be practical from the hydrology of the whole site for it to be 4 inches down.
Right,
18 inches to 2 feet in some areas out there is not unheard of.
right.
But 4 inches down, I don't think, Mark, we had one test out there that was that high.
And so my corollary question is, if it really were that shallow, you would see seeps and you would see breakouts of water in that lower area, and you're saying you have not observed that, or?
Now, the wetland is actually down about an elevation 180. So the 180 grade is sort of the low sump area of that entire parcel. So when we're up at around 200 to the basement floor.
So my concern with this is that the purpose of this regulation is that people have dry basements.
Right.
So for health reasons, that they're not getting mold in the rest. And whether it's an episode,
Right, an anomaly that, yeah.
it still happens. So the question becomes, is there the potential that during a rainstorm, and we haven't had a particularly rainy period, and this may have been one event, if we did have more rain or a long rainy period, is there going to be water accumulation in this, perhaps the upper end that doesn't have quite the slope? And are we setting it up that this house could have a wet basement? Which is
Yeah.
what we're trying to
Prevent.
avoid. So what, and Mark, I don't know what you feel about the site, but are there other provisions that would keep that water from coming in, particularly over here? Because you're talking about this being
It's how,
open and flowing away, but I don't know.
what's the basement ceiling height?
It would be an 8-foot pour, if you will, an 8-foot high basement.
And is there any possibility it could be sort of a split-level basement so that a portion of it could be a little different elevation, or is that just too complicated?
It wouldn't be practical. When we construct it, we do sort of automatically construct it with an exterior perimeter drain and an interior perimeter drain. That's just sort of standard policy now because you need a passive radon system, so you end up doing an interior drain system on top of the exterior drain system, which you would assume if there's any potential for high groundwater, This is all garage, so there is no basement here.
Mm-hmm,
The only potential for high groundwater might be what's coming off of this hill.
mm-hmm.
So that would be a real condition we'd want to concern ourselves. We're at full walkout at this point. So at this point, even after we're done, the ground is lower than the basement. So it's really, if there's something coming off of this hill and hitting this wall, we want to make sure that this wall is sealed and there's a perimeter drain, French drain at the bottom.
Well, so I was gonna ask, you, so almost an interceptor drain system?
Right, because in a way, we're trying to,
You're engineering it, but.
right, it's being engineered, but part of it is, it's to address the height restriction, which could also be done by a different design of home that's not as high. So, I don't know, which thing has to give in terms of dry basement, no mold, no health issues, or,
I guess the question I have is, we have the regulation for kind of important issues, but at the same time, it sounds like part of what you're describing is other solutions to achieve the same goal. So sort of one piece of that strategy is height to groundwater, with a question of this big mismatch between a period of moisture where we say 3 inches down there was moisture, but that's not measuring what we're thinking about for high groundwater. We think, because we see this equilibration that sort of what Lisa was describing is kind of inconsistent with the rest of the property, where if it were that high, we'd see seeps at other points in what you're seeing. So it seems like there's sort of two questions. One is 3 inches really high groundwater, and we're solving that, or is this height really high groundwater, and that was an erroneous measurement that was sort of.
high groundwater can be a momentary thing. You
Yeah.
know, what is the
Right.
highest it's gonna get?
There's been a
Doesn't mean
10-year
it
drought,
stays,
so what does that mean?
but if it gets there and it means that, let's say it didn't have that slope, that they had 3 inches of water in their basement for some period of time, but it was only a day or two, and the rest of the time, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
is that
Right.
acceptable? So.
Right, I mean,
If I
and-
could, we've encountered this, because most towns are starting to regulate this
Yep.
issue, especially on tighter lots where you have more problems draining basements with sump pumps. And generally, the assumption is if there's a way to gravity drain, not pump drain, but
Right,
gravity drain
intercept,
to-
yeah.
to daylight at a lower elevation, and it's done properly, then it's not, you're belt and suspenders against that
Right.
particular problem. If it's not, and you're sitting in a flat field and you do this, you're asking for trouble.
Right.
You could be doing a sump pump, which is asking for trouble and power failures and everything else.
I lived that, so.
So are you asking to get a sense so you know whether to go back and design something that would drain the water away from this part of the
Well, we would
house
do that
before
anyhow.
you do that? Because that's not here yet, right? There's no plans for that at the moment.
Not for the house, that is
So
true.
first, you just want to know, would we consider that? And
Yeah, I
then
would
you will go
certainly-
off and,
Right, I would certainly be able to provide a detail of the perimeter drain we are proposing. We just, we're prepping the site and realizing, okay, this house is way out of the ground, and it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense for what we see going on with the rest of the topography.
Mm.
And our ability to gravity drain the perimeter, and most of the house is still sitting above virgin grade. It's only, like the whole front of the house is almost at existing grade now for the basement floor, if you will. So we'd be happy to show it in detail of the perimeter drain that we're proposing. We would do that, that's standard, we do that in
So it could almost be, if this, then a conditional sort of, exchange, that there would have to be something that would intercept without a sump pump or any sort of electronic interventions to divert the water.
right, because I guess I'd be amenable to seeing that. And I haven't ever designed something like that, so I'd be looking to somebody else to determine whether it was appropriate and adequate. And that observation doesn't seem to make sense with the rest of the property. Frankly, we see lots of things where they're anomalous within a property. So that doesn't mean it doesn't happen or
Right.
there's something wrong with that observation. It means, oh, yep, that's an unusual portion of the property, is what it says to me. So, and it had rained, that makes sense. It's telling you that's a problem spot. And I guess alternative house design is not something that
No,
would be an
I
option.
don't
They're-
think,
we're coming
yeah,
off a
I don't
10-year
think we
drought.
warrant it here. If we need to, if the Board of Health determines it's not a reasonable waiver, then we will build the house 2 feet higher and truck in 300 more yards of fill. But it's sort of like, right now, you can see it, the existing grade of the cellar is not even, we'd have to bring it up a foot. And literally now, if you walk off of our excavation, it just falls down. The well is installed 30 feet away, and it's already 4 feet lower than the excavation of the basement floor. And it's popping out of the ground 3 feet, so visually, and we did some marks on some trees, so if it needed to be a drive-by, we basically marked 2 different lines right by the well that show the 2-foot variation in the excavation, which is a foot lower than the basement floor. So, if it's not granted, we'll keep it at the same height, we'll just have to truck in a lot more fill.
So Mark, any,
Well, the first question, was there ledge out here in
Yeah, I
this
was gonna
area?
ask that too. None?
Okay,
We're out of the ground.
so lots
This is-
1 and
this is
2 had
scratch
them.
the dirt off and then start
Yeah,
putting more dirt off,
yeah.
and pack it in, pack it in, pack it in, so.
And 2 is, whatever the board does, it's, as said in years past, it's a slippery slope, because why not come in for the next one, not you, but someone else, and you're theoretically starting to change the code. What was observed was what was found, and it probably will come up to that point on rainy days, and that's why, it's up to the board. What I would recommend is if you do it for this, you really should be looking at it as a code change.
See, I mean, there are reasons that that we're not supposed to make variances on new construction. But the real issue is that we're coming off a 10-year drought, so who knows what's gonna happen?
Can ask
I don't know.
I wasn't here, but this, for some reason, the title of this category is wetland and floodplains, of which this is not a wetland or a floodplain. So I don't know if the intent, the height limitation on the house was written under a category labeled wetland and floodplains. So was this an intent for floodplains only? Obviously, we can't build houses in wetlands, but to put a,
Well, it's also hyphen water table limits. If you look at section 4, 8.04, it's wetland and floodplains hyphen water table
and
limits.
that's not a reference to the area we're in?
I think it
I don't
includes
know, I'm
both.
not
Yeah.
saying I know.
I don't think it's not a,
I guess the question I have is sort of, it sounds like the goal is ultimately figuring out how to make, like, this is separate from septic, because we're not saying you are impacting your butters. This is really the question of sort of what the risks are to future homeowner, which is to me a different kind of thought in terms of as we think about variances. This is a piece that if I make a choice to buy this house, these are sort of the factors that I'll need to consider. This is part of my due diligence in terms of the stuff that works well in my house, the stuff that doesn't work well in my house. The 1955 house I have has many imperfections related to how water performed in it over the years. At the same time, we identified that at our inspection, we kind of do that. So for me, a lot of what I'm trying to think about is how do we skin the cat to do the best we can to provide due diligence to that homeowner. So for me, it's a little bit different than the variance for new construction around things that affect the abutters or other people in ways that aren't transparent at the time that the choice is made, as opposed to something where you say, this is kind of your due diligence to buying this home, is to figure out, does this basement seem like it's gonna stay dry? Does this seem like it makes sense? Whoops, that did not go great, but what's my plan? And so finding that balance and trying to find other solutions to me in this space feels different than a new septic or something else where the risks are borne by a larger community that's not participating in that decision. And so
to that end, this might be to make sure that that information is communicated for someone who may never look at building plans as deed recorded about, there is a system for drainage around this house.
Yeah. Because for me, it's just like feeling like they know what they're getting into and they can make a choice when they're purchasing the house to say, these are the trade-offs. I like that this house looks like this on this lot. My neighbor likes that my house is 2 feet shorter than it otherwise would have been. Whatever those pieces are, for me, because this isn't posing other health risks, it feels more flexible than some of the other things we think about. And so,
I do kind of agree. I think with Ben that it's a little unclear when you read that particular section of the regulations, if all of this discussion is for construction in areas that are subject to flooding or within wetlands. I mean, I think it's at least a questionable.
An opportunity to
Point.
clarify our language.
Yeah, I mean, it is a little unclear, I think, if this just pertains to
Although-
any construction, and if it did, why would they put it under that subheading? Like, why wouldn't it just be for any construction, like in an upland area? Is there a hard and fast rule that it has to be 2 feet
Although I have a
above?
friend who spent about $300,000 rerouting groundwater around her home. That was on a steep slope, and still it required
You can get
massive amount of
ponding
engineering,
on
so
hills.
Yeah.
I don't think that just because it's in that section,
Yeah.
it couldn't lead to flooding, the issue.
Oh,
couldn't
yeah,
lead
yeah,
to
yeah.
flooding
Yeah.
within a basement or a lower level of a home, so, whatever, even if it's a little ambiguous, I think that the issue is still valid, but I like your point about the risk being just with the homeowner, and how do we make sure, because they would be getting a
Due
new home
diligence.
that they've assumed
Yeah.
has gone through appropriate considerations, modern,
Are
contemporary.
there design alternatives that you
So-
could, are there other design alternatives that you could do to obviate this?
Well, we would need to make sure, as we do in any construction, because any sloped lot, you think you might know where the groundwater is, but you might, in your own digging, you might have altered, if you dig over on this side and it happens to be an upper grade, and now you put porous material like a driveway, you can inadvertently take a groundwater flow and bring it quickly over your house. So without waterproofing your foundation and perimeter drains to gravity, that's sort of a quid pro quo, if you will, for how to build a house in New England, even if you're 2 feet above the high water table. Because, if it's not the groundwater, it may be a gutter that fails on you and is now coming into one spot and running down the house, and if you don't have a perimeter drain, it's gonna get down to the footing and just seep right through the basement. So we always do perimeter drains on the exterior of the house. So I think you're not required to if you can prove you're above the groundwater elevation, but it's one of those, for the sake of $500, would you not put a perimeter drain in?
Real easy to
Yeah.
put in at the front end,
So-
real hard to put in at the back.
Yeah, it's simple, especially when it's gravity. If it's into a pump, that's a challenge to sell to a homeowner. They're buying a brand new house with a septic, with a,
Right.
that's like, inspectors will call that out and say, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
So that retaining wall, though, that's on the slope, right? That little arc?
Yep.
So could there be something,
Well, that
so
retaining,
like,
yeah, that retaining wall doesn't even need to be there, because that was under the assumption that whole hill was ledge, and it's not. We didn't really know. So that was a sort of manufactured grading plan based upon the assumption that whole hill was ledge, and it's not. So we can slope the hill, and then, we can gravity away from the house, swale around, and sort of take care of it by the driveway.
so that'll take care of the sheet flow?
That would take care of your, you gotta handle the surface
Precipitation,
water,
yeah.
But we don't necessarily know, we gotta make sure we're handling what's under the ground as well.
Right, right.
And on a sloped lot, it's, groundwater could be 3 feet high or 10 feet
Right,
away.
right,
So-
right.
Right.
So but you're saying you have been proposing putting a perimeter drain?
Yes.
On
And
that
that's- I think
side.
it's actually on my building plans. We have perimeter drains, we always do perimeter drains. We don't, because I think you have to prove to the building department that you don't have water. So you'd have, in order to take it out of your plan, you'd have to prove to the building department that you are above the high water, I think, because that's what was
Well,
represented to me on the building.
You mean more than a certain distance
Right.
above the high water? And what about things like moisture barriers, or do you put
Well,
them?
you do you do the waterproof on the outside, it's a heavy.
But what
rubber
about
system.
under the pour?
Yep, it's building codes, you have to put a vapor barrier underneath your slab. You have to use gravel underneath the slab.
Right,
So if for some reason
then it
there's.
will drain, yeah,
Yeah, well, you
Rain
never
on
know.
gas,
it's not
too.
You
gonna
have high
drain if
water
you're
in one
under the
spot,
surface.
Yeah.
you want it to mitigate out.
Right.
And get to your drains. So-
yep. No, that makes.
Have you ever done this before?
Yes. Every house we built.
No. I mean, at these levels, and had it succeed.
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
So if the groundwater is at 3 inches with the kind of
Yeah.
approach that you've taken, have you had similar properties that you built?
Oh, yeah.
That close to groundwater and had no issues?
Natick developed a similar policy, and basically their philosophy is it's 2 feet above groundwater unless you can gravity drain the perimeter drain. That's their criteria. If you cannot gravity drain the perimeter drain, and you're not running the water on your neighbor's property or the town drainage system, which is a real Natick problem, not a Sherborn problem, then it's not an issue. But if you can't run it into the town drainage system, you have to lift the house up and avoid the drainage system if you can't exit it to daylight on your own property. So,
I guess that's the other big piece here, that this is all, the fact that this is not a powered system, like, again, this is sort of water
Gravity.
staying outside of the house as opposed to water entering a system somewhere, or
Right.
sort of being at risk of entering a system somewhere.
So, since we don't have plans, Ellen, would this be just a
Yeah,
expression
We
of
need-
the sense of the board,
Right.
since there's nothing
I
formal?
would think, and then we would need
Can't
to
vote.
devise
Verify it,
Right,
plans.
they can't
Yeah.
approve anything
Yeah.
per se, yeah.
So it sounds like
We
it's a
have a-
question of, is there receptiveness in the setting of something like a deed recording, just so we can make sure that future homeowners knew about it?
that's fine.
You know, is
mean-
there receptiveness to saying the trade-offs with what you're describing, which we would see in more detail, to say this is exactly what's been described, so we can feel like we understand enough to be deciding on something concrete in terms of this is how we drain, we could say, yep, it's lovely.
And I think I'd want some input from the building
I was
inspector
just, you took it out.
on whether they felt that whatever the proposed drain was sufficient for this
Yeah.
circumstance, because it's not oh gee, remote possibility. We've seen information that says likely, that there's going to be something coming, and will it take it away? So that combined with, right, a deed recording, so that whoever's coming in hopefully will know that
least
they've
I mean,
got
my
this
feeling- I
to
mean,
watch
we
out
live-
for.
We live in a 300-year-old house, and we have this problem. We have a wet basement. It fills up with water every time it rains. I don't know why you would ever build a new house with that problem. So, like, I personally don't think that a deed restriction is a really good idea, because you can just design it to be better.
But I think your point
Can't
is
you
that you're
design
not
it to be
building a
better?
stone like your point.
Yeah,
you're
it's not
built-
gonna be the
designing
same
stone
foundation. He's saying he's
house.
gonna have
Like you're
a
saying, I've got
perimeter
perimeter
drain,
drains,
so,
it's not
and
a
then
300
slope it
year old
away, and
Yeah.
Right.
so,
And, my experience is 80% of water problems in basements are caused by the groundwater swailing
Yeah.
gutters and porous.
everything's going
Yeah.
in.
Not necessarily
Yeah.
The seat belt.
the slow rise of groundwater.
Right.
Generally, that when we ever have a problem, it's not the groundwater. It's something happened with the gutter system, or
All right.
a swale
It's just- yeah.
changed and not pooling.
But that's not the issue that's
No.
been measured
No, it's-
right here. So
Right.
the only thing that compels me, because otherwise I say, yeah, this would be a wet basement, is that you've got this very steep slope, that if you can ensure that you can move enough water fast enough out of there and down that slope, then fine. But I can't determine enough and fast enough. Volume and speed of moving it away, that's what I'm hoping the building inspector or somebody else would be able to do.
The capacity.
So I don't know if it's something a building inspector usually can assess, and if not, we might have to have,
Do you have any sense of sort of how
somebody-
they've looked at this in Natick or in other?
It's, quite honestly,
It's going into sewer and stuff.
a well-designed drainage system with a gravity drain
There's so much sort of
is
redundancy.
not an issue.
Right.
Yeah,
It's only when it's not designed or built right, or it's not put in the first place.
And as you kind of, when you say built well, like, how do you know it? Like, I don't mean that in like a rude way, but like, what are the things that you look at that, when you're sort of looking at it, you say, I feel really good about this?
Quantity of stone, quantity of clean three-quarter stone. It's when it's not even the pipe, and any site guy will tell you, the pipe's there, that's great. It's the fact, when water rises and hits that three-quarter stone,
It goes out.
it goes, because it now can go.
Yeah.
It can't go with
Permeable.
tighter material, so as, you know, if you have a foundation and you have 3/4 stone on your wet side, it's basically, the water's never gonna get even into the pipe, because it's gonna get about the first 2 inches of stone, and it's gonna travel down and out.
And you've got enough fabric filter and other things to prevent
is.
that from clogging over time.
There's fabric filter
So-
on top, which needs to be done right, you can't just throw it in there. But, yeah, the pipe helps, the fabric filter helps, and bottom line, if you do a gravity drain and it's set up right, you shouldn't have a problem, but you can't not have a gravity drain, because then you have to have a sump pump, and they fail, period.
If I can, what I would suggest, if we're gonna look at the building inspector, and he may feel uncomfortable, is that this came in as an engineered plan with engineered information on the groundwater from an engineer. I'd suggest an engineer request this, the request can come from the owner, but it be shown by an engineer that what the owner's requesting is under that engineer's purview and agreement.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, would it be a revision to a previously approved plan, just a new submittal with a variance request?
Well,
Done
there's an
by-
elevation change, so that's
There would
a
be
revision.
changes to the septic
Yeah.
plan, so the engineer would have some
So it would be a
involvement.
new submittal,
I would think so,
which, yeah.
because things are gonna change out here.
and then a variance hearing would have to be held.
Yeah.
If that's, yeah, because
If
it's still,
that's what you-
unless we change the code before
Okay.
that. That's what I was trying
I
to
don't
say,
think-
one leads to another.
I don't think that's
I think
likely.
it's much easier
No.
to answer this question than to
Time-wise.
Yeah.
Just the posting and
Yeah.
wording and all the rest, so.
The only thing I'll put out there, and this isn't about this particular project at all, is the bottom line is climate change is happening, and there are going to be more severe storms in the future. And so with that in mind, any kind of design that people come up with to divert water, storage capacity, flood capacity, be mindful of that, because it's only going to get worse.
Yeah,
So,
right, because I remember around when I moved in, there was a day of 10 inches of rain here. 10.
yeah,
And stuff filled up pretty fast
Yeah.
around town.
yeah. Anyway.
So, wetlands and stream banks and all the rest, so.
You know, when the ground's frozen and you get a lot of rain on top of that,
Mhm.
I had to come in my house. Never had a wet basement until that time, when we had those heavy rains at the end of March,
Oh, yeah,
beginning of April.
yeah, that was
President
another
flew
very
into
bad
Marlborough Airport.
time period.
Never had any flooding in my basement till then, because it was floating on the frost.
So just in the
Came right
interest
in.
of time, and Lisa's
So-
interest in tying our previous record.
Oh,
Oh,
Go team.
all right, so, so I guess we want to see new plans, and it sounds like if an engineer can please provide, if it takes another sheet or whatever, sufficient detail, their certification if necessary, and that will avoid some issues about building inspector is still going to have to review this, so you might also want to be talking to the building inspector and see how they're going to feel about this, just to make sure. That, right, get their sense
We
of
have to
it.
do a certified site plan for the building department. Do you want us to include it on that, or do you want us to modify the septic plans?
no, there's gonna be changes probably now to your septic tank
Yeah.
elevations,
No,
so.
actually, nothing changes. Even the elevation of the pipe.
Oh, okay,
It's
so,
only the floor and the top concrete.
well, at least verification
But
that,
maybe you want that for accurate record, though.
the problem we have is that the groundwater was determined by the engineer at the depth that was shown on your letter, which is on this plan as well, at the 196.9. The foundation, if everything drops, you'd be at 204.9. The tank's coming out at 200.62, so, yeah, in that respect, if that doesn't change, but if the wall's changing, and you have the opportunity to change the tank, you could, but again, I'm concerned about the groundwater, that we're changing an engineer's note on a plan without the engineer's oversight. That's what I'm saying, is that we need the
Okay,
engineer to be
so
part
in
of
the
this
revised
process.
plan, then I guess you're saying there needs to be changes anyway, so that we
Well,
have,
if if Ben doesn't
If
feel
you're
he
saying
needs
I'm
any,
not changing anything, then the septic isn't the question.
Yeah, the only references on that plan would be top of concrete and basement floor would change. which
This has to
presumably in
change
your
to
as-built,
that.
which is really the document that matters at the end of the day, is gonna have the proper as-built heights on it.
Right, I'm not sure paperwork, it's kind of a weird one. So paperwork-wise,
The
another
walls are
sheet
going-
with the details of what the perimeter drain would be?
I
And
think
then
that would be
We can
help.
add it to our certified site plan, so it can be stamped on a civil engineer as a detail, and we can, because we have to submit that to the building permit.
I think that would be useful.
Hey, Mark and Ellen, does that
How
seem?
many copies of, so if it's so then you're saying it wouldn't be a revision to a previously approved plan. Is there a fee? I mean, typically if he's asking for a variance now, so there's a variance fee.
Yeah, I do feel like we should, for a variance, we should have the
There's a-
up-to-date
Up-to-date plans.
information.
Yeah, on a plan.
Again, it's these numbers that aren't going to be right.
Right.
And so that, yeah, I do think that has to be updated if we're really going
So that would sort of be the only.
to have a
thing-
public hearing on it, then, and then that additional sheet to accompany it, and hopefully that will go through building inspector before it comes to us, so that we're just,
And then if any of the grades around that tank, obviously what they were doing on this plan is getting the grades up to the top of the foundation because of the height, but near the tank area, they were actually building walls to lower the tank. So you had 203 near the tank itself at the top of grade, where 206 and 204 were right near the garage, and they needed a wall for that. So, I mean, if that changes, we should have that change on the plan as well. So it shows how you're gonna regrade it versus the way it is now. Possibly could work out possibly that you won't have this walled-in area for the tank.
okay, so just to recap, the sense of the board is that if the deed recording informs future owners, and if the plan, the drainage can be confirmed by an engineer and reasonable design and,
If we can end up with a skin
Well, then-
cap, from my standpoint, it seems like a reasonable approach, particularly with the deed.
and I would say, to me, a big driver is the slope on the other side that will
See
help
the changes.
with the movement of water, so. And that it's not the entire house too, it's, just 40% of the house or something. Okay, any questions?
So update, we'll do this plan updated with the new elevations, and then we'll do a,
Site.
engineered site plan showing the foundation details.
Mhm.
And we'll submit that plan to both the planning and, both building and to you guys.
Mhm.
How many,
Go
how many
ahead, Ellen.
copies of the plan?
Well, we have 5 here. If it's an
Normal
addendum
5,
to this
yeah.
plan, it's gonna need to
So
be
we
5.
would need 5
Okay.
copies.
But what I'd like to see on this plan is the engineer notated the water at 196.9. I need the engineer to state that in his belief, the water is not at 196.9. Puts the engineer, who carries a stamp, on the spot to make sure that is what his opinion is. And originally, his opinion was it was 3 feet below grade, so, and what he saw it, so.
3 inches or 3 feet.
3 inches, I'm sorry. Yeah. We wish it was 3 feet, right, Ben?
Okay, so,
Thank you for that correction, by the way.
and then
big
is
difference.
this
And it's a
required a
variance.
butter notification?
Yeah, it will.
Okay,
Does that mean you have to tell
It's,
yourself?
it's a septic regulation.
You're surrounding you.
For the most part, yeah.
So-
Excellent.
But whatever you do, honestly, expect any applicant to be able now to do the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
yes.
You are effectively
Oh,
changing
yeah.
the code.
yeah.
No,
to
it's
a
a big deal,
process.
and that's why I want to point out that it's,
There are particular
need-
site features in terms of the confidence in a gravity draining solution, which we're sort of identifying as the core piece that makes it reasonable to consider this approach. In the absence of a robust gravity solution, this wouldn't be reasonable to consider, because none of us would accept a sump pump to be able to perform in the necessary fashion.
and I'd go further and say it's a more dramatic grade as well. that's here. Or we'll just call it falling water in the future.
And if I may, based on the presentation, maybe it merits a change to the code. But, you know, what I'm trying to get at is you
No, yeah.
have to be careful about granting a waiver to new construction because you've always said you wouldn't do that. So this is the first of the possible changes, or maybe the board can recognize that this will be a change in the code.
And in a way, I guess,
I mean, I think right now what we're saying is there's a global openness to it that really will depend on the sort of guidance of the engineer, the
Yeah.
particulars of the plan. I would say, like, I'm open to it. I'm also open to changing the code. I think what I struggle with is kind of, that also feels like a long process with lots of discussion and trying to
Yeah.
kind of get a timely response for
Understandable.
Yeah.
you.
oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
You
I'm
don't want
just,
to wait, because we have to write it, then we have to post it for a sufficient amount of time, so you're
And so
looking
I think
at
I
months
recognize the de facto
before
piece of
Yep.
you do that.
once
As long
you
as-
open a door, you need to be ready for that door to open. The properties that may have a similar structure or that could make a similar argument, I guess from my standpoint, I would say, if we truly feel like it can perform, like for me, it's like, can we perform equally effectively where we can say with confidence, I think this is gonna work as well? Like, that's sort of my checkpoint.
And, you know, if we hear in the future that there's water problems here,
I'll say,
we might
whoops,
go back and rewrite the code again.
There we go.
So,
sounds good, thanks so much.
no, that's fine. I'm thinking of the floodgate,
Oh,
you
yeah.
open it up a little bit. There's other codes there's other local codes that you may not be ready to change. And you open that door a little bit and others may say, well, you did it for this, why not for that?
and what I find interesting is that other towns are adopting this kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
yes,
that
I
is,
know.
it says that,
Proactive.
gee, even if it's standard, it doesn't seem to be working,
Yeah.
all those drains. So hopefully the site features here will enable it to work.
As small as it is, it's big.
It's up to your engineer.
That's great.
Good.
So,
Thanks, Ben. Lovely.
okay.
Now, he has a second part to the letter,
Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
which I don't have,
For that.
just so the board knows, it tends to make sense to me.
challenge.
The first one did make sense, too.
And
so
then,
I-
of course,
Oh, I didn't say that. I'm talking about your second one.
home designs
Talked
that
about
follow the
merits.
terrain and were interesting in that way, but that's, you know, that's personal choice.
Ben,
All right.
it's up to Ben if you wish to explain it.
Our second issue is that two of these systems, 9 and 15, the one you're just looking at, and this is number 9, the first house in. There's the house, there's Green Lane, here's the system. Now it's gravity. But there's a practicality in construction sequencing. Quite honestly, Sherborn's unique in the construction sequencing. Generally, the tank and the septic, or the tank will go in during construction before the plumbing is in the house. But I'm gonna have a difficult time getting 500 or 600 yards of septic gravel out here after I have a house in my way. So we are asking for permission on this lot and this one, which goes all the way out to
that
here,
section.
that we can at least truck the septic gravel in before we put the house in. We don't plan on building the trenches, D-box, but if we don't, then we're gonna have to sort of dump the septic gravel on the ground, put it on another truck, a site-type truck, and drive it to the back of the site, which might, it's not good for contamination of septic gravel, construction sequencing, so on. So I understand why the regulation is there, but in this case, I think it's practical for us to get that septic gravel.
All right, out of curiosity, you said 500 to 600 yards. This says 400 yards in each field. Is it somewhere between
depends, I mean-
5 and 800?
I don't think
Cubic
it's
yards?
gonna be over 556, but, we don't really know until we excavate the bottom, and have it approved by Mark, so we're basically under a little bit of a range there on how many yards we need, so.
All right, so that's maybe 40, 20 cubic yard trucks
More like, yeah,
traveling in?
20 to 30, so either 400 to 500, 400 to 600 should be 20 to 30, right?
If it's
20 times
400,
20,
right,
yeah.
but, okay, if it's 800, all right.
Yeah, well, it said in each field, so.
Right. And we have access roads out there, but they kind of go right through the house. So it would be practical to put at a minimum the septic gravel out there.
You're gonna be traveling down the same roads the excavator went down to the deep holes.
So your opinion, having been out there?
In this, for the soil testing, so, in this case, I would say if indeed the access road is going right through the house area, that I don't see a problem with it, conditional to if they're not going to install the leaching field at that time, or if they do decide to install the leaching field, is that they cover it over with some tarp or something while it's sitting there. Because it's out in the middle of the woods, vegetation, and the other thing to be staked and flagged, so it doesn't get lost out there, and then it doesn't get a lot of vegetation over it, such as leaf waste and so forth.
Great, yeah, we'll look at that.
Like a warming blanket, something like that.
Okay, and then what would be specifically the, what,
Due to
is there
construction.
some, stopping point of one thing and going to the other, or just,
In all respects to the issue of the distance and the house location, the access road, I think those all have merit, and I don't have a problem with the board allowing this. We looked at this at Lot 1 Elliott Street as well, due to a dilapidated house falling on them, where that was the new lot, and they were allowed to put the house in before, I believe, the septic before the house, or in concert. It was close to it. It could have been a repair. Because there was a new house there, and there was a existing house, 2 lots. One was a repair, one was new construction. But it would be the same kind of issue where the sequencing is difficult based on the construction of this lot, the
So,
house and the septic.
any reason that they shouldn't complete the field while they're back there?
They could, it's up to them. It's a matter of now how they're gonna get all the materials back there, the leaching trenches, the stone. I don't have a problem with them doing the whole leaching field back there, even getting all the piping up, because that way they won't need to worry about when they construct a house to get back there again. I don't see an issue.
We would like to do, because we'd like to, in a perfect world, the weather would hold, and we put the field in, the D-box in, loom it. and
Yeah, you could even
maybe
cover-
Touch it up in the spring.
Right, you could
So,
do your construction as built, then cover it over versus a blanket, versus a tarp. Yeah, you
Any
could get to
reason
that.
not to do that? Because that seems like good make-off.
No, then we can just work from the D-box, that long line out from the tank to the D-box to the house in the spring.
So your concern isn't really getting your excavators out there, it's your concern is getting the big trucks out there with
Yeah,
the gravel.
The septic stone, we can get out there, the pipe, obviously, that's easy, it's not a large quantity of material, but my concern is trying to make a road, because those are road trucks, they don't have the clearance, they don't have the tires,
Yeah, that's true.
so.
I don't see an issue based on the situation at hand. And we'll see others like this, and we have seen others in the past when it comes to how we coordinate within our regulations. This one's been kind of a overview at different times depending on constraints. So the constraints were mentioned. The protection of the system was discussed. With that protection, I don't see where it would create an issue.
Okay, and then, since part of the issue is also knowing what the drainage is from the house
Yes,
down to the
off of lot
fields,
3, that's it.
so how far, can it be the field and the pipe up to point X?
Point X, it can be 300, 500, 100,000 feet. It's the septic tank to the house that's the distance issue. From the septic tank onward, as long as you have enough cleanouts, you can put it in another, this one's pretty far away. This is,
No, and is the slope sufficient that there's not going to be a question about drainage?
you mean for the effluent to get down from the septic tank?
Yep.
Yeah, no, they've already shown the points they're gonna be using and the grades at those points. So they show the drop cleanouts and so forth throughout the plan. You
All
have
right,
drop
so
cleanouts.
would they be able to put in the pipe up to the
They could,
location of
but
the
it's-
septic tank, or no?
But
Because you
then
really
someone
want-
could drive over,
You
you
might be
know?
driving a dozer out there to take care of the loam, so you really wanna do
Okay,
D-box field,
Yeah, I agree.
leave it alone, and
Yeah.
come.
okay, so you're not even asking, so, all right.
You're like
If-
actively
if-
avoiding that.
And in all respects, they may not even have to worry about, like, if we're into additional inspections above and beyond the norm, which is 3 to 5, for the septic system and the house inspection at the end, they won't even have an issue with that, because we normally would go out for the field, and they can make the tank and piping in the second inspection.
Okay.
That
sounds
you'd be
like-
within, if we're out there 5, 7 times, then we have a fee for that those extra inspections.
Okay, so,
Should.
I'll take one stab at the motion and then tell me if we have to withdraw it and fix it. But do we have a motion to allow the D-box and SAS to be installed prior to the house?
So moved.
Subject to, subject to, it
Controls.
depends, it depends on how far the completion goes. So subject to completion of the fields or staking, flagging, and covering of a field if it's not completed.
Yeah, I would say completion of the field with staking and flagging as well. That's required in Title V,
Oh,
even
okay.
after it's complete,
Okay.
until it's
All right.
approved.
So in all cases, staking and flagging, and if not completed, then also covering of the field for protection until it is.
Yeah, until you put the
And is
final
there
cover.
some timeline, like a day, that it can't be uncovered, or are we talking?
Oh, they,
Season?
unfortunately, there's no timeline, but what that would
We could
cause
set a
possibly is
timeline.
more work for the person doing the work, because they may have to clean it off, rake it off, redress it. They don't want to leave it uncovered for a long time.
Within
If
a
the
week, so a
pours,
week, yeah.
yeah,
And
I mean,
if
that's
it's
normal
not going to be-
construction process.
We would, if we're permitted to put the lines in, we proceed. Septic gravel lines, loom, and all we gotta do is send somebody out with a.
And then-
But if something happens.
Delay.
Then
Delay.
it can't stay uncovered for more than a week.
So that means you want to get to us your construction as-built and your sieve analysis of the sewer gravel in place quickly, so it's not open to more than, I would say 14 days. 2 weeks is
2 weeks?
reasonable based on the issue of they need to get the engineer as-built and sewer gravel analysis to us.
And do we need a provision that, let's say it's 2 weeks and it's during
Winter.
a snowstorm and an ice storm
Yeah, then
and stuff
what-
that might have shift, right? It's
Yeah.
already been laid.
Yeah.
So then it would be subject, all of it would
Yeah.
be subject to you inspecting, or is that?
No, that's reasonable, and if they don't have it covered over with its required grading, and they're using hopefully warming blankets if it's through the winter, but I heard Ben say that he's planning to cover this over, which is the best way to go about this.
No, I agree, it just, you never know.
But if you didn't,
Something
yeah,
weird
the-
could come up
yeah.
and it gets delayed, so.
Yeah, so that could happen, where if that happens, it would have to be covered with warming blankets. They make them so that they absorb the heat during the day and keep the pipes from contracting and expanding it day and night, because they start to break apart. Ben doesn't want that
And
either.
like, lots of this seems like we're getting really far down into contingency.
You're in the
planning.
technical stuff now.
Well, you'll have that same problem if you're building a system.
Right. So I guess the question I have is like, how much do we need to adjudicate this versus the, via
Oh,
this
that's
motion?
standard, which you would
Right.
look at anyway.
Yes,
Like,
All
none
right.
of this is specific to the sequencing.
and for his sake too, because he'd be losing all this material if he
Okay.
lets it freeze and thaw.
So then, we'll leave it at the, complete, either complete the field in the D-box installation, with staking and flagging, and if not completed, then covering it.
Yep, exactly, with appropriate covering. Yep, makes
Okay.
sense.
So that's the motion, somewhere in
moved.
there. Ellen, I know will work her magic on that.
Second.
And all in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good night.
When were you thinking of getting started, Ben?
Sorry?
When were you thinking about installing?
Probably 2 weeks.
And make sure you have your installer called for
That's right,
pre-construction.
did that.
Do you, are you already the, are you the installer? You're the
Yeah, I'll
installer.
have my, Chris or Gary will be.
What
will
was
be-
the
will be
property
out
the
there.
first
You do a
half?
pre-construction,
He
you
was
can do it by
discussing, was
phone, you
that
just set it
9
up.
or
I set it up with
15?
you and your engineer. So,
15.
That was
Well,
15?
you don't have to
Yeah.
go out, we can do it in the office. I open a plan, I say, what plan do you have? We can do it by phone.
Okay, sounds good.
So just give me a call and that can be arranged.
Which was lot
Yeah,
three.
Whoever's doing the work
And
for you,
then
he should be on the
this
phone as
second
well.
So,
part
yeah,
was
this
for
is
both 9 and 15?
I believe for lots 3 and 4,
So
and
this,
Yes.
3 is 9?
Yeah,
I
I
see
can
that.
decide.
Can we,
Yes.
let's just have the
Or
expert.
4,
clarify. We
lot
just want
4
to make
is
sure we're
9.
describing the
No,
correct part.
yes, lot 4 is 9, lot 3 is 15.
Okay.
but you're planning the second part, the installation for both?
That's for both
15
lots.
And 9,
Yeah.
okay.
9 and
Water
15.
table
And the-
issue is 15.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make
Thanks,
sure.
Ben.
Which is lot 3.
Thank you.
Oh, good night.
Okay.
No, I'm confusing.
I'm guessing Paul is here
97 Maple.
for 97 Maple.
Poor Paul, he was trying to get him before that, but, so.
All right.
As the board probably remembers, this was the building application. We did room count on it, and they could have anywhere up to 11 rooms now because they're dividing this garage/barn into now 2 rooms, which was originally 1 room
No,
studio.
no,
vice versa.
opposite.
Oh, they're opening
Opposite.
the wall, so thank you.
Yeah, they removed the wall,
So-
so it went from 2 to 1.
Yes,
Although
But-
it sounds like they never had.
approval for the
to have it be
rooms
a
there,
finished
that's,
space.
yes, that's what it was. Thank you for catching that
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah, no.
So with
It's been
that
a
said,
long
it's
time.
still, well, it's still 10 rooms, I believe, is what it would be. And we were talking about deed recording to control that, and also a plan from Paul, and Paul's here. He has designed a plan. We're going to have.
Connect the
yeah.
studio.
And you'll see that it has a crossover on a water line, so he is planning to put in a Schedule 80 pipe there. And also, he's gonna add the invert from the studio. That was just an oversight when he moved the studio, but the studio's at 103.6. The septic tank inlet is 96.55. He has plenty of probably elevation to get a slope. Paul,
You can actually walk in under the stone.
so you'll be able to slope that
Yeah.
pipe
Sorry, I
2%.
had that on my original sketch.
As long as you can slope it 2%, I don't see where that can't be handled at pre-construction. But I would recommend approval of the plan, and it's up to the board if you wish to do a deed recording on the room count.
Well, is this a formal submittal?
Well,
There's
that's
no
the
application
yeah,
or
there's no
fee paid.
application, that's right, came I,
Yeah, you can't
So,
vote on that.
I'd recommend once,
$300, right?
yeah,
And I checked with conservation, we also have to go to conservation.
Yeah.
so that will have to
And
be
then
done. Are
is-
they in a rush with this? You looking
The
for approval,
contractor is-
approval of this
he only got
tonight?
as far- He's not going any further as far as I know until he
And
gets approval.
Isn't,
go
is
ahead,
there
Amy.
already water in,
No,
the water line?
There was a
is that water
sink.
pipe existing, Paul?
No,
No.
Yeah, so there's a new, yeah, the sink isn't there yet.
I thought the sink is,
there's an old sink there.
there is an
How'd
old,
they
a
get water to that?
soapstone sink.
Yeah.
Well, we
Hose?
carried it in buckets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's no
But I
water
think we just-
line,
Like, the
so.
pieces of this that I think are the larger issue of like, how do we handle the fact that
Yeah.
at some point a decrepit barn was turned into 600 square feet, or what's the square footage of it?
Now that I've seen it, I think I might be moving in there.
So like, I think
pretty
we just wanted-
nice.
Yes, especially fixed up in that
Yeah.
wall of windows. It is nice.
Yeah, the
For
old
me,
windows
that's
were
one
Nice
of the
relief.
things I worry about from the slippery slope, just because
Right.
um, I want to do my best to do right by the homeowners and the kind of sunk pieces, but at the same time, it gets tricky about, for me, it feels like it's one scenario if we say, kind of similar to what the property we talked about a few weeks ago on, I think, South Main Street, where we kind of say this, you know, things are grandfathered in,
Right.
and how do you manage that? Like, this is somewhere in between, where we
Yep.
say we had a decrepit structure that was never, like, it started its life as a barn, at some point it got changed, and now it got changed
Studio.
more, and at what point do you have the break point that you say, this is however many square feet of finished space, which they're certainly not intending to use as a bedroom, but this is again our
That's
checkpoint
their
about,
intent, and,
right.
right.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I
something-
think that's fair, and I think we were honest with them
Well-
in that discussion too.
Because what this told me and what they sent is that it was finished before. But, right,
Like, it was finished.
But-
and how.
did it go through the
Well, I
standard
didn't know that.
procedures?
We didn't know that.
It's
We,
just like finding that
Yeah.
balance about like.
it was
where's-
discovered, it was discovered.
Yeah.
But if I can, just because we have dealt with others, the one on South Main Street, we didn't have a design flow. This one, we have a disposal construction permit and a septic plan from 2001 showing a design flow. So that, there is a difference
Right,
there.
so that-
It
so
is,
that would-
but they're not, it's 4 bedrooms?
It's a
bedrooms.
four-bedroom
4 bedrooms,
design,
right.
but it's actually a, what we call a fairly new system,
Yeah.
conventional to the new Title V requirements as well, so. Because it was
That
built in
also begs the question
2001.
of whether the system could be, did we
It
talk
could be
about that?
expanded.
We did
We
talk
talked
about that,
about
and
that.
they said they're not interested in doing that they didn't want 5 bedrooms, and that,
But I think it's kind
Sure
of
they
trick of
don't,
like,
but
you
it's-
don't want 5 bedrooms, but if you want several hundred more square feet of finished space,
right.
that's never been.
No, I'm
Right.
just
Right.
reiterating what
Yeah.
they,
What some controls, if you don't mind, some controls would be, one, not having a full bathroom, two, having a deed recording on the house,
Yep.
and limiting it to this being the amount of rooms they can have, basically, as a four-bedroom, because of the four-bedroom design septic.
Right, and
Which
I
are-
was thinking of also, if we were going to have something like a deed restriction to allow it to keep the same septic is, same thing I had, no full bath, no cooking provisions, and it
Okay, yeah, that's
can't
good.
be turned into a housekeeping unit, because there's a house on Farm Pond that has something not far off of this, where
Oh,
they have the
yes.
main house,
Yeah.
and then they have the in-laws'
Yeah.
house.
Right, and
And
again, it
it's
has nothing
small.
to do with how they'll use it, it's
No.
who does the next person say, gosh, this
Yes.
is great, it's plumbed, it's wired, it's
Right.
heated, it's conditioned.
People have compounds all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
the place I rent on the Cape, it's, I mean, it's minuscule,
Yeah.
but they have separate
Right.
buildings and they have a loft that they turned into bedroom space in one of
Like the room count isn't like a
outbuildings.
Sherborn big, like this is another piece of like Title V,
Yeah.
right? In terms of
Yes.
like, this is, you know, I think the best argument is the series of renovations they're proposing are one that in the old system we would count as an 11-room situation, that they're moving towards a 10 system. And so it's challenging because both are out of compliance with a 4-bedroom
yeah.
system. But at the same time, to me, that sort of wiggle room is around the fact that it feels like we're moving towards compliance from an out of compliance scenario.
With the deed recording and the
with the deed
conditions.
recording. I still am.
Because it's
fairly-
not a trivial amount of space.
Right.
No.
Sure.
I mean, I'm still ambivalent, but just trying to think about what
It is big.
sort of how
So-
to balance it with these
800.
homeowners and sort of as opposed to like they're not the ones who knew that, you know what I mean? Like they
Right.
bought the house with the space.
Yeah,
being
a
what
lot
the
of
space
people
was.
feel that pain of something having happened, and if they didn't have real
Yeah.
estate lawyers who did
Due
good
diligence.
due diligence,
Yeah.
right, before buying it, to identify where these pitfalls are.
Right, but
So,
it also wasn't a finished space, it wasn't, you know, there was a.
I think I think if we say it's not a finished space, I think the whole thing gets much. Like I think.
Oh, right, I'm saying when they,
Oh, right,
when
right.
they first bought it, it was not a finished space.
Well, I think no. I mean, I think
Partially.
it becomes a question. If we say it was an
Oh,
unfinished
so
space.
do we know that this finishing they did in their time?
No, so I think this
Versus
is.
they bought it
No,
like
no, I
that?
think it looked like that. I mean, that's my interpretation of the
Okay.
letter and the pictures is that
That's what I
this is
thought
what
at
it looked like
first,
when they
when
purchased
they
the
moved
home.
in, okay.
It had, you know,
Two
insulation,
rooms.
a heating source. It did not have a water source. You know, and so I think from like how we've counted rooms, it seems like it'd be a habitable space. It was conditioned, it was electrified, it was heated. It had, you know, clearly its appropriate clearances and square footage. And so I think it was a habitable space before, though that was not something
Yeah.
that the board had
No.
signed off on. Somebody just kind of said, this barn is now, like it's sort of the perfect illustration of why this is tricky, because it's like, oh, what's a barn? Oh, now it's a garage. Oh, now it's a studio.
Right,
Oh,
up,
now it's a
Yeah.
piano bar.
Yeah.
1,200 square foot in-law.
And so that's like, the piece that we have to balance, but for me, it's really that question of, if we say it's finished and we're going from 11 to 10, we should support that a la a failed system, even if it's a nicer 10 than the 11 were, because I think the risks we had, the pieces I struggle with are the fact that we're bringing water in now and we're bringing sewage in now.
Mm.
And so I think those are, you know, that's the other piece of ambivalence of how finished is the space. Like, you could heat a garage and not say like, oh, this feels just like a living room, and what they're building, it sounds like a really lovely space, but functions differently than something that looks a little bit, you know, more like what,
Right.
you know, where the kid might have the drum set. And so it's really
Right.
balancing that. So I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, I'm just saying that's what I'm struggling with in trying to think about how to make good choices that are generalizable. If somebody said, I'd like to put a new shed of this size on, and then 5 years later they say, oh, craziest thing. We insulated, we heated it, we electrified it. Then we sold the house, and the next guy says, okay, now I want to plumb it,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
It gets tricky.
Well, right, but we discuss maintaining only half bath, could not be converted to full. I like the no cooking, no installation of kitchen appliances, anything like that.
When the microwave will go in.
Yeah, deed restriction on the bedroom count, and that space can never be utilized as a bedroom, right? That it's gonna remain 4 bedrooms.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, we,
right, deed restrictions
without
are-
expanding the septic system.
Right.
Yeah,
They could expand the septic system.
yeah, right. They
Well,
could add another line. How expensive is adding another line?
Oh, at this
Estimate.
point, yeah, it's probably 10,000.
Really, for one
Yeah.
line?
It's a big system, big upgrade.
And do you have to add the same length line?
It's off. Oh, no. Let's try.
Oh, is it, maybe it's your phone being too close to the mic?
I don't know, but I don't want to make trouble.
And then you have a
You have to put in
1,500,
the same equal length line, no matter what?
Yeah, they always have to be equal length. Mark was just gonna say, now you gotta replace the septic tank.
unless the board granted a waiver, but it's a repair, so right now the septic is 1,500 for 5 bedrooms, it'd
Want
go to
demerits.
2,000.
Or they could take out the toilet and just have a sink in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's another, there's a lot of opportunities here.
That would, to me, that would change its function a lot.
Yeah.
You mean not put a half bath, but just keep it a sink?
Yeah.
Because I think then your risk of, again, I totally get your Cape
Yeah.
experience, but I think the risk of having downstream conversion is much different
Oh,
when you say.
oh, no,
there's
no, no,
different-
I'm saying it happened at that, my.
No, I know, the
Yeah.
Cape is like no bathroom, walk uphill.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Oh,
I'm
yeah, no,
saying
no, no, but,
Like, that still feels,
but there is a bedroom there, so.
Maybe I should turn this back.
Why don't we just
Where
tell
it
them what
was.
the options are?
You did send me
Septic.
an email
Keep
today.
like
I mean, the
this.
bathroom's not in. They just
Okay.
framed where it would be, but they didn't put in
Yeah, but they're-
the
they
bathroom
want a
yet.
bathroom.
No, it's all rough, the building inspector caught it before it got too far.
Right. He says, okay, so the email says, it's addressed to Paul. In the event that there is any question, Deb and I are willing to grant to the approving authority a deed restriction limiting the number of bedrooms to 4 per 310 CMR 15.002. I believe that this should put to rest any issue concerning room count. Thank you. So,
I mean, I think
it,
310
I-
CMR grants us the authority. Like,
yeah, but it's not mandatory that
Yeah.
we accept, and it's, it's not a guarantee, right? We
Right.
don't have a way to enforce it, and we're just trying to make sure that
Carol,
a septic system
I'll
doesn't get
need that
overloaded.
email.
Oh,
right,
now
they'd
that-
be comfortable with the, yeah.
Okay.
okay.
So I guess the other question I have is, what is the piece we're approving? Because this is also the builder did all of this stuff without Board of Health sign off, and so
That
it's
is
a little
correct.
bit unusual just because it's like, oh, it's
Post facto.
sort of
Yeah.
now at this point that's.
I rejected it once I found out they were doing this. They came in and did not qualify the work properly, did not describe the work
Right.
properly.
But so I guess the question I have is, in terms of thinking about what, we sort of talked about some solutions that we think are plausible that range from very expensive solutions like septic revision to more minor solutions like their toilet that may still be really disruptive for the goals a homeowner has for their space versus things that are less restrictive like the deed recording and the future provisions to say, we want to be transparent to you that like this can't ever say, oh, we love having this, we just want to put in a dishwasher for wine glasses and like a prep area for food.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the line in the sand we have to say it's really important to us that this not move. Like it's already tricky and the only reason we can get past the room count issue is both the granting of the sort of authority to limit it in the deed restriction, but also they're moving towards a more compliant scenario than the house that they purchased. They're going from 11 rooms that we're counting to 10. And the housing code that we use to define a room doesn't define plumbing as a piece of that. Like it doesn't have to be plumbed. And so I think that's the thing that helps us solve the room count problem is that it's a more compliant scenario, which is different than most of the scenarios where if somebody said, I just want to put this separate house that's tiny and
So I'll
Yeah.
just be a little devil's advocate.
Yeah.
So someone had a 4-bedroom home in the past, and over time, they added on
3 bedrooms.
5 rooms,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And someone reduced it by 1, they're getting closer to compliance, but still way out. So
Yeah,
here
yeah.
we're right on the edge, but
Yeah.
it's
Right.
that
up or
consistency and applying it,
Right.
and we are trying to find a solution to a problem that's
Right.
moved too far without
And I
enough
also feel
input
like
along
that's
the
a piece I
way,
struggle
so.
with like, I don't think there's any fault on the part of the homeowner in this.
Right.
But also, I'm surprised that this wasn't identified as, I wonder if this will be an issue. in terms of the builder, and I worry about reinforcing the pattern of you didn't follow the process.
Right, and
Or the
woohoo,
rules in
look,
it.
it,
And then that then gives you more leeway, seems like it runs the risk of promoting those
Well-
behaviors.
right, a lot of people talk about do it and then ask for forgiveness,
Right.
which is what's happening.
Right,
So-
I mean, I think it's interesting in the letter, though, it said, okay, so first it was unstable, and then, you know, my wife likes to do the flower arranging, and so we thought it'd be good to have a sink to enable that, and then it occurred to us that it would be convenient to have a toilet in the studio, and it wouldn't cost us a lot of extra money to do that. So we could also entertain the fact that, well, you know, that's, it's starting
maybe
to
that's
get
a
into a
transition
gray
point,
area
yeah.
that we're getting increasingly uncomfortable with, and that, you know, we understand the sink for the purposes of the studio, and if you want to play your instruments out there, you know, that's great, it's better than the garage probably,
Yeah.
but, you know, that you're starting to broach into an area we're not as comfortable with the whole half bath, so.
And so in that case, we'd say we're comfortable with water coming in for kind of sink water access, but as we start to include sewage in there,
Toilets.
it's not
Water
that
going
we're
out.
changing the room count, it's that we're saying we're
Right.
increasingly uncomfortable with the fact that you're moving towards compliance if you say, I had 11 rooms that work like this, and I have 10 rooms that have many different functions.
Right.
Those are kind of counterbalancing.
Uses,
We're
right,
saying,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Diagnosing. Oh, I want to ask, well, we have a little lull, cabanas. Have we counted pool house rooms as part of?
Yes, yeah, and the last one, I believe, we also had them put in a septic tank to get to the other septic systems.
Yeah, and they had more than just a
Yeah,
bare
they-
room
yeah.
there, but we've included, so this would be an outbuilding like that, where we have counted the rooms, so.
Right.
No, I actually wasn't thinking that, I was thinking of the one on
Greenwood?
Greenwood.
Yeah,
Masonville Lane is like that with a septic tank, it's connected with a pump, and that also has a kitchenette.
Was it existing?
Yeah.
It's a
But I
cabana
think that if
heater.
you're.
and I'm not opposed to a kitchenette if it wasn't that we're bumping
Right.
up against these things
Right,
that
if they
this
had
is
a 5-bedroom
converting to
system,
a.
I'd be completely fine
it's
with a kitchen.
Incremental.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you count the main house, excuse me, as 10 rooms, but one of those 10 is really a porch that was made for a season by Aggie. It's
Yeah,
not-
but-
there's sliders to it, it's not something that remains open, it's not something that people use as an extension of the kitchen, it's just too hard to eat.
Yeah, but it's
But
finished
Didn't
I
we
think
count
that they still
9
did
in
it.
the
We can't
main
help what
house?
the
I think we
definition
count
is.
9 in the main
Yeah, I
house
think
and
we
2
did.
there, which is what
Yeah,
got
we-
us to 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what our.
We had 5, including the sunroom on the first floor, because they never opened the kitchen to the dining area. They switched them, but they kept the wall.
But-
Right,
so
and I
again,
said they could go open concept.
Right.
And also help solve
Yeah,
that
that
problem.
would.
I'm afraid I'm gonna have to peel off soon just because I have to finish
Yeah.
writing patient notes. I guess the question is, what's the branch point that we have right now in terms of saying, if we wanted to say, we're totally comfortable with your initial, we're deeply ambivalent but willing to approve your initial design as we add the half bath, that's kind of our line in the sand. What is the thing that they're waiting on us for? Because again,
No,
Is it like a
they're waiting
certificate of
on the
occupancy?
permit to continue. I rejected it. I rejected the building permit, and
okay,
basically it was based on the fact that, need to have rooms in barn, in-house reviewed, and no plumbing work until review is approved by Board of Health.
right,
So it's still open for your determination.
yeah.
They put the plumbing in, and the building
have plumbing.
inspector couldn't stop them, so, but
Yeah.
they can always, no fixtures are there.
So if it was just the sink, would
That
they
would
need
be-
the same
Yes.
plumbing?
yeah.
Yeah, so either
But it
way.
wouldn't be as much sewage waste in it.
Oh,
as
no,
it
no,
would be
I
regular.
I mean,
understand
it
that,
can't be
I'm just
exactly
saying.
the same sewage waste, because if you're not going, when
Yeah.
the sewage is coming from the same number of people, what location they inserted into the
Yes.
system isn't the driver.
Yeah.
But
But-
you
But I
wouldn't.
think
yeah.
the concern about it turning into something with future owners, because I think they've been
Right.
clear and transparent about their intentions, which aren't what we're concerned about.
Mhm.
It's the next cycle.
Right. The next person who sees it is a in-law
If I
or
could add,
Yeah.
housekeeper.
tonight, every plan is approved subject to a deed recording, says you want the garbage finder. Guys seem to be fine with that, only it's much easier to put a garbage finder in after we're all gone, than it is to convert this to a bedroom or a kitchen.
Yeah, but like, they didn't even come to us to get to this point,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, they said we started with the barn,
Whose fault that is, they did submit a building permit application, and
but
got
they
one.
didn't disclose,
They
this is
didn't,
what this
yeah.
space is. Like,
They
said,
submitted
this is
it for
what-
renovations of
This is a
rooms.
workshop.
Right,
That was the
Yeah.
first one I
This
approved.
isn't a workshop, this is a finished space,
Yeah.
that's, I would call more a lounge.
So just so the board knows,
and
I
augmented.
Right.
I did approve a building application for renovation of rooms, and that's all it was, and I even wrote that next to my signature. That was on July 17th, renovation of existing rooms. Then the building inspector came to see me and told me they were doing plumbing, and I said, well, that's a whole new story. They're gonna need to reapply, and I had to reject it because they had no,
And I don't think there's any malevolence at all or any
Approval.
intention
No,
to deceive. I think it's just, like, that's the tricky piece for me, is kind of at what point do you kind of
Have to
draw the
say
line in the
sorry.
sand?
Yeah.
And again, it seems like this is also different. While I would certainly understand not wanting to have my project be $10,000 more expensive, those may be the sets of trade-offs to say, there are two solutions. One solution is to expand the system. That has a cost of $10K in that setting. From our standpoint, we then have basically no restrictions on how that property is used. Put a kitchenette in, put a dishwasher, put an in-law
It's
suite.
okay, yeah.
Right? Totally fine with me. Or choose not to do that, and then we're uncomfortable with this being a toileted space, not because
Keep
it
it-
increases the amount of waste, but because it kind of takes us far enough down the slippery slope that we're uncomfortable proceeding.
If you do the latter, they can always decide down the line if they really wanna use it. for
They'll
something
expand.
else. They'll expand the septic.
Right,
Right.
right.
And then
It doesn't, it's not
Doesn't close the
saying
door.
forever, it's just saying for right now, and where they're at. They,
Yeah,
I think they need they need a resolution
Right.
quickly,
And
one
you
way
know
or the
what?
other.
Even if we said no toilet, they're still gonna need a deed restriction, because it's still 10 rooms.
Right.
But it makes it easier, I think, to pull away
I
from
think
More
it
it.
makes it
palatable.
easier-
Would,
right.
would they still need the septic plan for the
Yes.
sink?
Yeah, they do.
Anyway,
Yeah, they
yeah.
still need
Yeah.
that,
Okay.
regardless.
Unless they wanna
So
haul
if they
water.
just upgraded
like
the
we
septic
used
system,
to,
though,
or
all the
something.
problems would go away.
Yeah, again, the point
It's
here
money.
is,
I know.
don't submit an application for $100
Understand.
to you and $70 to conservation, if you guys say, no, you don't expand.
or if they're willing to expand the system, you know, that's,
Right.
Well,
they may-
obviously, they'd rather do the deed, which
Yeah.
yeah.
is why you.
But you will need to submit this plan for the,
But I think they'd also, I mean, I think the point is it would be both the deed recording and not putting in the half bath.
Yeah.
Or the
Sticking with the
toilet.
sink
toilet.
Yeah,
only.
a
Right.
quarter bath, or whatever you
sinks
call it.
only.
One
A
six-
sink.
You're not gonna allow the five.
What, well, I
Well,
think that's what we're
that's what
talking
we're-
about, is
we're-
at
that's what
what
we're
point do you
debating.
decide this slippery slope, like we started with a rotting barn, and now have a fully finished space that's got, like, just trying to figure out what point do you do it. I think that they all,
Again, so the point I was making was if you allow that with the current design, with the hot bath that's roughed in, say it has to be made into a 4-bedroom and you can't expand that beyond, they decide they wanna do that, then they come in with a plan to alter the septic system, which takes months.
We're not,
Why would
we're
they
not
do that?
worried about them. We're worried about that this is now a really
this is
nice
not-
space
this
with
is
a
now
bathroom
completely
in
finished
it.
space with a bathroom and.
Yeah.
My understanding is they've only been there 2 years.
So, all right,
Okay.
But like their septic system, their home, that structure is gonna be here 50 years.
Yeah.
And so this is the touch point we have, that's the only time that our opinion matters in terms of figuring out how to manage that space and to be able to control how they use it. And so that, at least that's how I think about it, is this is our checkpoint to say, how do we use it? And they're not compliant with the Title V room count, and so we have a way to address that in terms of the.
Wouldn't the file include, say they would sell the thing tomorrow after it's all done, the file would include this, and you guys, if Title V came in and said it's 5 bedrooms, or the studio has a kitchen in it, that'd be a big red flag, and you'd know it.
But we couldn't actually, there's then no mechanism to enforce to say that, you know, I can't condemn your house, I can't boot you
Right.
out. I
no,
can't-
what's been done in the past is then no other permits would be issued for anything.
Yeah,
That they, if they
Because it's
applied
not
for
per-
permits.
right.
But, so I do want to bring up one little sticky point that, again, on that idea of consistency. So we've had deed restrictions for finished basement rooms. You know, they came along after, they finished off a space and have a half bath. And so we've allowed it 10 rooms for a 4-bedroom home when that room is in the basement. So,
I think if we've allowed it
not
in
a
the basement, but I think for me, like, the basement in an outbuilding, like, it starts to become.
They're really different.
See, I don't feel like they're that different.
I
Like,
don't,
10
I
rooms
don't, a
is 10
finished
rooms.
basement,
To me is
would-
more appealing than an outbuilding.
yeah, I mean, you're much more likely probably to have a conversion to a bedroom in a finished basement than
Right.
you might be
Like, to
in
me,
a,
if we did it for finished basement, it's reasonable to do it for this, if that's
Yeah.
kind of the tone we've set before.
well, that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
then that would go
I think
to,
that it's-
then the
That-
half bath is.
so you're saying you
Sorry.
didn't
Right.
increase
Right.
the
In-laws.
room, the bedroom count, per
Right,
se.
it 10, I don't know what the exact example was,
Yeah.
but 10-room house, but a 4-bedroom system, deed restriction on the extra, you know, that 10th room in the basement, or whatever.
And then, could there be a condition that no additional alterations could occur without, revisiting, Board of Health approval and for, you know, potential
Right,
septic expansion or?
I mean, that should go without saying. It could be part of our vote, or something like that, or
Yeah.
whatever motion we make. And
And-
then,
and they
again,
still
maybe
have a-
we beef up the, not just limit it to 4 bedrooms, but be specific, as we've said, no full bath, no cooking, and,
4 bedrooms in the main house only, right? Because this septic isn't gonna be adequate to support.
The deed recording can even say that if the house is put up for sale, Board of Health has to inspect this additional room.
did we do that?
Yeah, but
Whatever
I-
you want on it.
So that's if they let me in.
Functionally?
That's
And
not
then,
a-
yeah, it's like, oh, they
easily-
did their
easier
inspection,
said than
just
done.
like what happened at the camp.
They might say,
They come
"I'm
on
coming in a
Wednesdays,
house."
so we'll do everything right on Wednesday, but then tomorrow comes and,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I would say, like, if it feels like we've done things that are consistent with this, I
Yeah.
think it's important to be consistent
Yeah,
with them.
yeah.
Right,
To
and-
every degree possible, but again, I think finding the balance of how much, like, this is a fairly large space, is my recollection in terms of what the footprint is of the rooms. It was like 400 or 600 square feet,
Yeah.
which is, like, again, certainly within the scope of a finished basement. But it sounds like, so right now we don't have a butter notification, we don't have other things, so this is us, just similar to what we had for Abbey Road, saying, is there an openness to this for the formal variance hearing? Like, what are we deciding tonight? Are we communicating openness? Or are we granting a variance?
You know, you can't,
We can't grant a variance,
I
because
don't
everything
no,
about
it's
it,
not,
so
and it's not
It's
really
not
a
a
variance.
variance.
Right,
But you can't, they need to submit plans and an
Yeah. Right.
application and
Okay,
fee.
all right, so.
It's getting late, 'cause I know you have to go quick, so he's
Yeah,
ready for you.
so, so we'll do signing while
Well,
we're
just heard
wrapping up
Matt
this
say that
discussion.
he's gotta go
Um,
home and do some work.
So you could just sign on some line.
that sounds
We'll-
perfect.
We'll fill in around it.
So that you, Mark could approve the building application conditional to, upon receipt of
Plans.
septic plans, the fee, is, and water, the water's on the septic plan.
Yeah, and
Um,
also we would need, if we're going to, a deed recording.
Right.
Is it a variance for putting the septic above the water line?
Here's your stamp.
I don't.
I don't know.
The septic
know.
connection?
That's a Mark.
Yeah.
Mark,
Sorry.
is it a variance for putting, didn't you say the septic was running over the water line?
You have a crossover, so they have shown on the plan.
Is that a variance though, or no?
No, that's a
Okay,
requirement in
that's-
Title V, they have a 150 pressure pipe is all put on it.
Okay,
So you
so
just
it's
need to
just
have the
some
right kind of
engineered
piping. Okay.
provisions around there.
Well, these aren't
Um,
gonna be released. You can
So,
come-
right, the part that just bugs me, even though I think it's similar to a basement, kind of okay with that, and since it's separate from the main
You
house,
should
it,
find it.
if it doesn't turn into its own unit, it by itself. It is a lot like a basement,
I think you.
but that things got this far.
Right.
Again,
I mean, like,
not
that's a
their
prin-
fault.
But that's
Not
a
their
principle.
fault.
Yeah.
Once we've septic,
We'll
I think we really have to just,
get them stamped tonight.
I don't wanna be punitive, but
Yeah.
I also have no, I mean, we didn't even know about it, why would they ever come to us and say, oh, we wanna spend $10,000?
Oh, that's not.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen, so.
Well,
But
the
like-
septic effluent, though, could have been that, the half baths and basements, or,
There was no, I mean, we're adding septic,
But, I mean, technically, we're
Capacity.
reducing, I mean, right now,
but we don't.
from
They're
a technical
reducing the room
standpoint, we had
count.
11 count room, we had 11 room count house. That
Yeah.
was non-compliant. We have a
Right.
10 room count
Which is
house,
compliant.
which is still non-compliant. But, like, the only way they could essentially be compliant would be if this space were gone, and they'd be 9 rooms round down.
Or open up the kitchen to
Right.
the dining area. There's
But
other ways.
But I think it gets tough for us
Yeah.
to say that we
Right.
could make an active argument that there's more effluent, given that the room count is reduced,
Yes.
right?
Okay,
I mean, it just, whether there is or there isn't, like, I just think kind of like trying to figure out how it's much nicer space, and this is a
Right.
really well thought out renovation.
really nice.
But I think it's tough to say with fewer rooms there's more effluent.
No, but they're adding a half bath. There is going to be
No,
more.
but it's the same
Yeah,
amount of
it's gonna be
backsides
used for
using more
concerts.
toilets. Like, I could have 5 bathrooms in my
Well,
room.
you know, the band's
they
coming
have that
over
piano
now.
bar.
Right, the band's coming over, or, you know,
Yeah.
my business is taking off, you know.
That's-
Maybe I'm gonna start doing weddings. Who knows? All
No,
kinds of
once they
things
start
happen.
doing weddings, isn't there more
Yeah.
permanent?
So,
uh,
I just think Thor is here, right?
jeez.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say it doesn't
I'm
sound
right
like
on the
we've put.
fence on this, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think the important things for them to know is kind of the ambivalence that we're facing. That's partly the sequencing, partly the timing. I think the factors that are helpful is their comfort with the deed recording, the fact that we're reducing the total room count, and the fact that it's not anything more than a half bath are the sort of key protective factors. And I think the other things
with
it
no
sounds like-
kitchen.
the other things that would sound like for the future would be no other substantial renovations to that space without revision of the septic system to be a 5-bedroom system. So no kitchenette, no kind of shower or other washing facility, more substantial than kind of what's in there. And
Or
for
what's
me, that still
proposed.
leaves me deeply ambivalent. I feel like it's a reasonable choice given past patterns. I don't love it. And so I think
Yeah.
it's also
But-
just important to acknowledge that and to say, for me, I think at that point I'd say, I don't like a bunch of pieces of this and I worry about the slippery slope. At the same time, trying to be consistent with what we've done in the past with basements and recognizing the reduction in room count, it's tough for me to argue why we can't do it.
Precedents.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, right,
So
because
I'd
it's
say-
such a as, you know,
Yeah,
Whatever. I'd live there.
me too.
So, especially where it looks like it's headed in terms of renovation, so it's an inviting space, but we could say that about people's beautiful basements too, so I guess. So, I should be making a motion? So,
I'm happy to do the so moving once you're all done with the hard part.
oh, okay.
We're
And
good
any
that way.
fixing that has to happen to
No,
this.
that's a lot more pressure.
So, do we have a motion to authorize the agent to, oh, God.
Sign off on the building
To
application?
sign, thank you, sign off on the building plan once
Do
it's
you not-
received.
Do you not want to have the septic system
Can I,
installed first, the piping before the building
Okay.
application's approved?
Oh, I don't know.
And
Do you want that?
Do you-
Yeah.
do you want me to, based on all your discussion, I was writing, do you want me to read what I had as a possible motion?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, Ellen, thank you.
Based on what you said. Well, there's more you'll have to add.
Uh-huh.
All right, a motion to allow the agent to sign off on the building application following receipt and approval of, and probably installation of, septic design plan for a septic alteration with application and fee. A deed
Beautiful.
recording, I just have deed
And
recording
I'll give
for
you some
whatever-
stuff on
yeah.
that.
And it might include that it must always be a half bath, I had that.
Is that coming back to the board? Or am I approving it?
I had it as you approving, it, and
Yeah.
that no further renovation of the
Assuming-
space
yeah.
without upgrade the existing,
substantial.
no further
Painting.
I'm like changing the
no
size of
further
this window is fine.
substantial
That makes sense. That way we don't have to wait for a meeting.
renovation of the space without an upgrade of the existing septic to a 5-bedroom.
Okay, and then I'd like to have a lead-in to that, based upon, whether it's based upon the reduction in room count and, there was something else. It's just gone out of my
Which
head.
one? Oh, yes, yes.
Reduction,
Improve compliance.
that's kind of what
Piano
the
bar?
room reduction means. And that
Right.
the board will be invited to all, no, don't write that down.
I started,
And flower arrangements every week, but, but we can't do that.
No.
That would be very, very, very wrong.
No, I
So,
read that in the ethics thing. No
Uh,
corrections.
room reduction and that this room is separate from the main house. Because I think that makes it basement-like in a way,
Right.
in that.
Remains.
It makes it a little, if someone was using it as a bedroom and had to run across in
Well, no,
their
I think-
Yeah.
I think-
pajamas
I think her
every
point
time
is
they want
The fact
to.
that it's a separate structure, so if you said, let's do exactly the same thing and it's over the attached garage and continuous with bedrooms.
Right.
Would feel different than this.
Yeah,
And so I think that's a point, is that you want the minutes to reflect that that's factoring into the decision as opposed to, as a condition to these homeowners.
and then for the, if anyone thinks of anything else that led to this decision, but those are two, to me, two
I think those are
important
two
things.
points.
The deed restriction limits to 4 bedrooms,
In the main house,
in the main house,
half bath, no more than
yeah.
half bath. right?
No more than half bath, no cooking provisions, and it just can't be turned into any kind of housekeeping unit. And so
Without
4
an
bedrooms
upgrade.
in the main house basically implies that then this can never be used as a bedroom.
Before you so move, a matter of when we usually approve these, they can only go up to rough electrical before the installation of the piping is in this case. So that should be noted, that they're already very close to rough electrical,
Okay.
so that they can't finish until they install the water pipe and the
Septic.
sewer pipe with the as-bills.
So they're
Okay.
gonna be sort of held up until they have the plans to approve the septic.
Yeah, they're gonna get, once those are approved, then they put it in, get me the as-bills, then I can approve the building permit.
Okay, so do you have a way to weave in what Mark just said? Excellent.
So they know that this building permit will stay in the mode it's in until they get the installation of the appropriate plumbing in there, both sewer and water.
And the restriction for significant renovation is limited to this outbuilding. The main house is entirely unaffected, from my standpoint.
Yeah, I agree.
Except for modification of bedroom
To that.
Right.
A new
Right.
wing.
Right, but I think like our intent isn't to limit what they do at the primary residence in terms of the upgrade, that would be considered independent.
They were renovating rooms in there.
Right, which is fine. I think it's, like, we're not
We hope.
restricting global renovation. It's really just saying we don't want this space
Of
altered
that.
further.
Turned into
The other things
something.
would be
Yeah.
independently considered as a new proposal, not limited activity on the main house based on the decisions for the outbuilding. So I don't think that adds anything, I just wanna make sure.
And what's nice is that it's two separate building applications, so they, the only application I'm talking about not signing is the one for the outside
Outbuilding.
facility.
Lovely. Okay, so move,
Uh-huh.
so moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, but reluctantly opposed? Abstain? Did everyone vote?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Did you vote?
Rebecca, did you
Rebecca?
I
vote?
voted very quietly.
okay.
51%. Have a good
Mr.
night.
Bowden, aye.
Okay,
You can keep hanging out if you want. This is,
No, it's not.
all right.
and if I bail on you guys, you're able to
Yeah, I
vote on
think-
the minutes with a quorum without me. Is that true?
Yes.
What
Is it?
about the scheduled meeting dates?
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Uh,
The 2018 meeting dates.
Yeah, I mean, they're the usual dates.
Well, the ones in italics are dates that you normally would not have on.
Yeah,
I showed them so you would know what they are and why.
This is February 21st for school vacation, April 18th, and Thanksgiving Eve. I concur.
Okay, so those, I just wanted to give you the option. So they would be as normal, and you can always add a meeting.
yeah.
What do I want to do that for?
Good.
And then have we done whatever we need to do to update, because we moved the meeting, was it next
November
month?
13th.
We moved something.
Yes.
That's, we've done everything we need to do.
That's not
Yes.
Lovely.
And did, just before you go, so you know what might be
Yeah.
coming on the 18th, did Matthew Stevens ever decide whether he wanted that?
November 1st. November 1st.
Okay, all right.
And I think I
And
would
I
put-
still might want to limit them to,
Half an
Half
hour.
hour,
I
no
told
more
him
than a
that-
half
I told him
hour.
because he wants 7:30.
oh,
So 8
okay.
o'clock will be a variance hearing if
Oh, all right.
one is there.
okay.
The
Also,
only other
because
thing-
we've heard a lot of the things, so I also, hopefully they'll be ready to kind of get up to a higher level and not start with the most elementary of things.
And at the next meeting, you wanted to meet with the ZBA,
Yes.
so their meeting starts at 8.
Okay,
There's only a variance hearing at 7:30, so at 8 o'clock, I can put on the agenda to move to meet with the ZBA, but for how long?
that,
Yeah.
is there any way to find out from ZBA what they're going to be discussing and when to make sure
Jeannie
8's a
had
good
told me
time?
the
and-
18th is strictly,
Oh, this is for 59 North Main on the 18th, so, and ZBA has their meeting when we do, and we still haven't gotten final plans and stuff,
I
so.
searched everywhere.
And you know what, I can't remember, did we send over that, Mark's comments on what we don't have, or your write-up?
For what?
Or was I supposed to
59
send
North
that?
no,
Is
you
that the
just
one that-
asked, so
Yeah.
I
12
sent it
minutes
to you.
there.
Can you
They're
get
building
that
an
to
auction.
Jeannie and whoever else on ZBA, so they know what we don't have
Oh,
to even
okay.
evaluate?
Oh, I did.
Which, so,
And I will be in absentia for a 6th birthday at the next meeting, but I will think of you and I promise I'll watch the YouTube.
really?
You've watched
Okay.
YouTube.
Wait, so are you not gonna be here the 18th?
I am not gonna be here the 18th.
Okay,
Are you not
well,
gonna be there?
I don't,
Uh-oh,
Uh-oh.
Is that next October 18th?
yeah. I had a client, decide to have
8:23.
this gigantic meeting that day
Oh.
in Boston all day, and I honestly don't know when we're gonna be done.
Yeah.
So.
so we have
I
variance
have it on my,
hearings?
I still have it on
One.
my calendar, I mean, I can say, but if it turns out, I
What-
mean,
What I would say is I can be on call.
okay,
And, I mean, like, depending on, like, I'll be like kid's 6th birthday, but also like 1.5 miles away. And
Okay.
so if it's like, this is gonna be a really big problem, this will
Okay.
not be catastrophic.
Do we just have one variance
It's just
hearing?
one variance hearing at 7:30.
Okay,
7:30?
so-
Yeah,
what happens if I were late?
well,
Could
if you were
recess.
late, the
But I
meeting
could-
couldn't start until you got here.
Oh, okay.
And I couldn't even open the hearing and continue
Okay,
it because
okay.
we wouldn't have a
Okay,
quorum. So
alright.
we have a
But
few,
if
like,
Matt came for the 5-10 minutes and left,
Yeah.
you could recess, could you
I mean,
not?
so what I
So
should
another-
know is by 3 o'clock,
Yeah.
I'm gonna know like, hey, we're done, and
Yeah.
it's like
I'm in
happy
good
and,
shape. Yeah.
yeah, so I can just
Yeah.
email
I
you
think,
guys.
Like, I won't be away, and so if somebody can just let me know by like 6:30 if I'm necessary for a quorum.
Yeah,
like,
I'll
we
let
can
you
make
know
that work.
way
Yeah.
before that.
Yeah.
Cause
I
I'll
think
know,
that'd be
I'll
fine.
know like if, because people are coming in from all over the country.
Yeah.
And if they're leaving on like a 6 o'clock flight, I know I'm good,
Yeah.
whereas if they're
Yeah,
not.
yeah, but we would
Yeah.
hate to have I think, I'm glad we're talking about it so that we have a good plan,
Yeah.
so there's no surprise, no quorum.
No, I
So
don't.
it's wouldn't be
Oh,
problematic.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But do you want to vote on this schedule of meeting dates?
so
Oh,
moved.
sure.
Okay.
And second? And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Anyone
What
else?
was that?
Schedule of meeting dates?
Looks good.
Oh. Yeah, see this, do we have
It
to
says
have-
December 5th.
That's next year.
2018.
Oh, I'm
there?
sorry.
So what about,
We would
Oh.
normally meet,
2018.
Yeah,
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 but
this is the
that's
wrong
this year.
year.
but if
So
it's a
why are
Wednesday and it's the
we-
first, we're
Yeah,
meeting
but
usually.
he's saying this year.
First Wednesday of every month we
meeting
meet.
the same night as the so that'll have to get changed.
so Ellen, I have a question. Does the February 21st and April 18th, are those,
Canceled.
They're
those are just canceled, so there's only
Those-
one that month?
Right.
It doesn't get moved to different
No.
weeks?
correct.
Unless we
Unless we-
decide that we need
Add
to,
a
as
meeting.
we've sometimes done in the past.
And the November 21st, because
Correct.
it's Thanksgiving Eve, gets canceled?
Right. It's not
Okay.
canceled, it's just won't be, there,
there's no
it won't
scheduled
be,
meeting.
right, there's no meeting scheduled.
So
That's
4th,
right.
18th.
Right.
My
It's
favorite
not being
holiday.
scheduled.
Right,
But instead of having it, two out of the other 3 weeks, we could have moved it by 2 and had 2 that month, but we're just choosing not to.
We could
That's not
add
me.
it on an as-needed basis.
Shh. I
No,
like
but is
one
that
and
what
a
you,
month.
yeah, no, I'm not complaining. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure I'm understanding.
So,
By the way, I'm gonna solve piano like zero right away also.
so what are our meeting dates this November?
Bye.
I heard that, Jeff.
I don't have a calendar with me.
Yeah, I need my,
What do
I
you
need
need?
this.
The
This-
first and third, November 1st and November
13?
15th?
Yeah, the 15th, okay. I'm gonna just throw that in right now.
Yes.
And then now December 6th, we'll need to get, what's the first?
Jeff was just saying there could be a
What's the-
potential.
There is, it
conflict.
What's the first Wednesday in
It
December?
is that.
December
We're
6th.
gonna have to move our meeting then.
Oh.
Or cancel it, because you
Oh.
can't have,
Let's cancel it. Because, because otherwise it's 2 in December with the.
Could we
2
just do the
for
13th?
Christmas?
do the
Yeah.
13th?
Let's just skip.
Do you wanna just
20th's
move
right
it up
near
to
the
the
holidays.
13th?
Yeah, why don't we do the 13th?
Except in that's when you're doing budget stuff too.
Mm.
It's so hard. You may need another meeting,
Just to go over budget.
but you could move it to the 13th.
Well,
it
we're
gets
not gonna have
long.
one on the 27th.
All right, so maybe, all right,
No,
next
right?
meeting.
No, because I'm on vacation.
Cancel
that
the
week.
one for December 6th or whatever that's in conflict, and maybe we'll find another day and try to hold it to only being budget, so we can come in and focus and
Okay,
get through that.
So you said the 1st and the 15th, though, of
Of
November?
November, yes.
Okay. I just want to get them in. So we're gonna
Okay.
have town meeting.
oh, but so about the next meeting, going over to ZBA,
Oh,
how
yeah,
long? do you
I
think?
guess.
I mean, I don't have,
Probably be 2 hours. I bet.
Oh.
Would, is Jeannie the, she would be the one in the know.
she just said the whole meeting is
Right.
59 North Main.
I guess
I don't-
part of it depends on if they ever
Did you
get
sign?
more information to us before that meeting. Because the
Very
peer
well.
reviewers, I don't think, have it, so
So,
we need more septic information and well information.
Septic.
So, yeah,
Um, Or would you want to put a time?
you know, I think we are gonna need at least a half hour
I
there.
don't, yeah, I mean,
the other boards.
And we don't have any other variance hearings that night.
Just the one, 7:30.
So,
but, I mean, what's the
How
overlap
long do you
of
want to
our
stay
business
over
with
there
their
before you
business?
come back? I don't.
We don't set
So
town
right
budgets.
now,
I mean,
there
I
is
could see somewhere between a half hour and an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends
Yeah.
on what comes through.
Most of this stuff.
And if we finish early, we could, if we don't have scheduled appointment, you know, we could come back and
Yeah.
just get back to other things. And maybe confirm with Jeannie that we're gonna be showing up, but we
Oh,
need to
why
be
does something
able
say
to get our
8:23?
stuff out of the way if we have any
Oh,
stuff.
what happened was Paul,
maybe
we
we
changed the
wanna be
name. It was
listening to
originally
whatever
Grace and
they're
it went to
Presenting
John.
or
So this one's an extra
something.
one.
Yeah,
Right, but now she's tricky.
it's hard.
Excuse me.
Because it's an unknown.
That's- yeah.
It's too much of an unknown right now. Are they coming
Yeah.
You
in
mean the town?
mentioning new stuff, or are they still on course with what they've been talking about all along, and it's just the details that we need to see, and will we have those details?
Well,
Yep, that's what it was. Just changing it.
Try getting to ZBA the information about what we do and don't have, and highlight what we still need to be able to give this a fair review and our input. And see if they know if they're making a presentation, or any more presentations on their project, or is it just going to be mostly ZBA and town committee discussions? And
But I also don't want to make a scene.
people,
Yeah, right.
oh, are we going off?
Well, you're being
you
asked
had-
if we're done.
Well, you
We-
were going to note receipt of the,
Yeah.
Oh,
Whitney Farms.
yeah.
Oh.
the-
Okay, so we'll get, all right, so we'll talk about that more, and let's just see what we can figure out and firm up on that. Okay, so we received information from
The pumping of
Whitney Farms, okay. Anything notable?
They're going every 2 to 3 weeks on pumping. They're doing some maintenance as well, but again, the state said I think it's up to 10 units that they can go before they have to go from the pumps, the pump out tight tank to the on-site septic system.
Okay. All right, and then,
So these, can I just ask a question? So these houses are no longer listed in the affordable housing count? This is not related to Board of Health? but I'm
oh,
just asking
can we,
because-
I just want to take care of a couple
Okay,
things so
sure.
that the
Sure.
video person can
Okay.
go. Let's get
Alright.
just the things that were here that people might have wanted to hear about. We did the schedule of meeting dates, flu clinic update.
Oh, yes, I had, okay, the update that I wanted to talk with you is typically, every year, I've been able to use grant money to buy food for the volunteers that work the flu clinic. And I buy sandwiches. It's from either the sandwich shop, last year it was from Outpost Farm in Holliston. So to give them
excellent.
dinner before the flu clinic.
Not bad, huh? Especially up.
This year, the grant, DPH will not allow us to buy food. So what I would like to ask you is, would you allow me to use the revolving fund for the reimbursements from the insurance, when we process the flu clinic through insurance and get the money for the revolving fund, to buy sandwiches for the volunteers prior to the flu clinic?
I like the idea. Anybody else?
It would,
Comments?
I mean,
I
I
have
think
no
it's
objections to
amounts
someone.
to $100 to $150,
that sounds reasonable.
and spend it out of it's an immunization clinic revolving fund.
Mhm. And it's important because we need trained
You
people
need
doing this, so, yeah.
So,
It's
and
an
We'll
important
pay you a
service, so-
sandwich if you do this.
Yeah.
so,
Woo-hoo.
I mean,
So-
this is another limit that they're putting on that grant money,
Yeah.
that
Mm,
we can't use it for anything.
Yeah,
It's available, but they won't approve it.
okay.
Yeah.
So do we have a motion to approve Ellen to get sandwiches and I presume
revolving fund.
beverages or whatever, some food? How about just food?
Up to
for-
$150.
Up to $150 for the volunteers at the flu clinic.
So moved.
Second.
All in
Am I
favor?
allowed to-
Aye.
Aye,
Will she need a food permit?
okay.
Am I allowed to second it if it affects me?
Just teasing.
Oh, yes, I think so. And do we want to have the discussion about possible educational presentation on septic and private well, or wait until Matt's back? Okay,
You're gonna have to
What,
recess.
ask the
for a
question
minute.
again?
on this. Do we
You
want to
don't-
have
You-
that tonight, or wait until
You
Matt?
don't have a quorum now.
You will in a
Okay.
minute, so you should recess. You
All
should
right,
recess before.
we're recessed, and I think,
And then you just have the minutes.
I think you can stop taping. We're not formally done, but we have
Yeah.
minor minutes approval
just
and
put us-
signing of stuff, so. So if you'd like to pack up, that would be fine.
Not that we don't want